Knockback, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Knockback. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my brother Dagan. Let's see, what class would you be? The Beastmaster.
Look, look what I'm wearing.
What
I'm a white mage.
Oh, a white mage. I see.
Well, it's like beige.
I was like, what are you, like a Moogle? Dagan Moriarty, good to see you, my friend. We're back. How are you today?
You didn't think you'd hear those words.
No.
Right?
They said they thought when I put it on hiatus, they're like, nah, this shit's canceled.
Well, let's be honest. We pretty much thought so too.
Yeah, I mean,
no, I thought so. You didn't. In all fairness, I think you didn't think it was. We needed some time. We needed to recalibrate.
Right. There's a lot. We did 285 episodes. This is 286. And
I don't think I even realized that. Holy shit.
And as I said, 286. Dig? 286.
I get it. I mean, what's up, Li?
Yeah, that's actually so fucking weird.
That is weird.
286 was the first three digits of like our town's phone numbers. And so not our area code, but like the first three digits, and then there's the four digits. 286 was Brookhaven's.
What the fuck?
Where we're from. Very interesting. Oh,
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah. It's been a good episode. Let's get out of here. It's good. It's all downhill from here.
Good seeing everybody.
Yeah, so we let me see here if I can find this. We last put up our last episode in June. So we've not even been gone a year.
Oh, it's June of 24?
Yeah. At that point we were doing like the last three we did were like the one you did with PJ, Uncharted, The Lost Legacy, which was awesome, and then Ex Machina was the last one we did, the movie.
Yes. Okay.
Which also has a Brookhaven acknowledgement. So it's all it's all full circle, but I knew I wanted to bring it back. I mean, so to explain it to people, I think, well, first of all, I think we can do it like every month now.
I like it.
And I want to focus mostly on games, though I have other ideas. There are some movies I want to do. I really want to do Shrek at some point because I've never seen any of them. And I told you that I had an idea of like trying to get old pictures and doing visual episodes of like breaking down old pictures. Like I want to do one of breaking down my old bedroom because I have like a few pictures from different angles, and you can like, and then we can like number them like it's an exhibit, you know.
I think it's a great idea. You just started to tell me about this yesterday. Yeah.
So but I want you to be able to find some of your own too. And I'm sure we've joked around that like I don't think our parents took pictures at all.
No.
So I can't even believe that like I have pictures, but I do. And but not very many. So I wanted to come back with a bang, and I think that one of the and I think one of the games that people wanted us to do is Final Fantasy V, because of course when the Pixel Remasters came to PS4 in 2023, we did 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we love 4. And then we were working our way to 6, which is like the ultimate Final Fantasy game, but then we kind of just washed out. So we're coming back with Final Fantasy V.
Woo!
And I was playing it in secret. Some people noticed, because if you look at my trophies, you can see it.
You were saying this, yeah.
Right. Well, all right. So here's the other thing.
Okay.
Is we were supposed to record this and publish this last week.
Yes.
And Dagan got sick and he couldn't record, which is fine. But we had talked about it fairly extensively in a Constellation episode that we recorded that we thought was going to go live the day after. So you'll notice weird cuts in that episode because I really didn't want to ruin the surprise.
Shout out to Dustin, by the way, for doing that. I forgot to thank him yesterday on Constellation for that. That sucked.
Yeah, I had him upload like a raw video, and then I went into like the transcription tool and was just looking for references to the game, and then I would cut it out because we talked about it really twice, so it wasn't a huge deal.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay,
like in the beginning, we talked about it pretty extensively, so I cut off like 10 minutes, and then at the end, we talked about it a little bit, and I cut it off. All right. So no big deal. But Dave, how you feeling? How's life? How you doing? Welcome back.
Yeah, everything's good. I totally forgot we're rolling a week late. I temporarily forgot about that. Yeah, feel much better. Had some kind of weird, I don't know, like a rotavirus / stomach virus thing. It was just, and it was weird timing because it was I had my first colonoscopy the middle of last week. And about 2 or 3 days later, all that started. I have no idea if it was related. Right, because the procedure went swimmingly. I have to say,
a little bit of butt play.
I had a little butt play.
Yeah, sure.
I don't remember it, regrettably. But dude, it was like a well-oiled machine over there. You know, our local hospital, Doylestown Hospital, got taken over by University of Penn, which is like an Ivy League hospital. Dude, it's like night and day now. The only regret, Helene was my ride to and fro, and she was just going to stay because they tell everybody give it a window of 2 hours. It got done in about 36 minutes. She was like still in town getting coffee. So she was so pissed because she wanted to be in the recovery room. But I was like, it's not like really that big of a deal.
Were you loopy when you woke up? That shit really,
dude,
that shit fucks me up, dude, to the point where like it's comical. Like I can't snap out of it.
It's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
It's not. I have to say, I was worried about getting put out because it was like 35 years since the last time I had like a surgery and had to be put under.
Your arm?
Right? For my arm.
Yeah.
And I was 17.
I remember because mom would buy you McDonald's, but wouldn't buy me when you were in the hospital.
It's Burger King.
Burger King. Oh yeah. She wouldn't buy me. She wouldn't buy it for me. Like I would go with her. And I'm like, can I have fucking crazy. Burger King, please? Anyway.
That's a little crazy, Bob. Yeah. It's a separate issue.
It is. I consider them linked. But yeah, go ahead.
So what was I saying? So it was like I couldn't believe how fast it was, but waking up out of that, it really was like no time passed. And I remember I was joking around with the anesthesiologist because I'm fascinated with those guys. And I remember saying to him, I'm 51 and I'm tired of my career. Is it too late to go into this? And he was like, it is absolutely too.
Oh yeah,
too
that's
late.
right. You said that on Constellation. Yeah, because you're too old.
Right, because you're too old.
And there's too much time.
And then I was waking up.
Anesthesiologist would be an interesting Final Fantasy V job.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. And, you know, I was joking around about his watch and then I was out waking up. But I remember trying to text Helene, like trying to have enough druthers to just send a text saying, I'm ready now. Dude, it took me 20 minutes to get the text out because I just didn't have my faculties about me. It's not terrible. Like, you know, you're going to be all right, but it's just this feeling of like, you're still asleep, but you're conscious. Right. So it was, I was grateful that it went quick, but got sick. Who knows? Was it from the waiting room? Was it from being in the hospital? Was it completely?
It was on the butt probe that they put in your asshole.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm blissfully ignorant of what exactly they do in a colonoscopy, how they do it, the equipment. I don't even want to know because I thought it would be painful after. Dude, not at all.
Yeah. No, it really isn't. It really isn't painful.
Nope.
I can tell you now that I have a memory of waking up during one of my colonoscopies and
I've heard this
before. And that like one of the nurses was like, oh shit, and like literally put all of his weight on me and then I just got knocked out again. Oh because like you can't move. If you move, and that definitely happened. Like,
dude, that's fucked up.
But like, it wasn't, I don't think they did anything wrong. I think these drugs, they fuck with me in a weird way where like, I also told you the story after one of them when the doctor was talking to me and I was like, I was so out of it and like, was just saying weird shit. He's like, I'll just talk to you later and just left. And he was so impatient with me. He was like,
clearly this isn't working.
And I had to be wheeled out in a wheelchair every time I got one because I was so fucking looped out.
They do that a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't need to do that, but I remember, yeah, Helene's younger than me, but she does her due diligence with everything. So she got one before me and they wheeled her out in a wheelchair. And I was like, is that necessary? But I guess sometimes they do it.
I just remember because I did all of it at Kaiser, which people know in California, like the huge HMO.
Yeah.
And what I remember is like, it was taking me so long a couple of times to like recover. They're like, you got to go. You know,
really?
Like, yeah. Like, cause you're like in the recovery beds or whatever. And I was probably there for a while. Like, it's like you said, it's a system, you know, you get checked in, you deal with the nurse, they do all the thing, they give you the gown and all the stuff. And then, like the person ahead of you is like next on the line. And then like, and so I totally got it, but it was like, and then some person like had to push me out in a wheelchair. And then it was like a couple of girlfriends ago picked me up and she drove like a Honda Accord and I had the seat all the way back. Like and then I went home and I slept it was like from the early afternoon all the way to the next morning.
Did you really?
Yeah, there's something weird about like the way I might be allergic to those drugs or something. I really don't know, but because I'm allergic to buspirone. I know that. So it's not like
what is that?
It's like I was taking it for anxiety, but it's like I think it's like a more generalist like psychiatric.
Okay.
So it's not unheard of that I would be, sick based on some of these other meds. But yeah, I'm glad you're healthy. I'm glad they didn't even find any polyps or anything like that. Because there's a lot. Oh, because I have they cut that shit out, but it's apparently not that big of a deal. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll do that on the fly if they find them, right? So I guess it could take longer, and that's probably why it didn't take long. Gratefully, but yeah, you know what the only thing is though, for those out there that are younger and haven't gone through this yet, the prep is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, it is.
Clearing your system out for the procedure.
It's bad news.
Is everything I heard it would be.
Yeah, it's bad news.
It was absolutely, and of course I was the first one scheduled with my doctor in the morning, so I didn't sleep. In fact,
it's for the best. I think that's why I did it too. It's for the best.
I guess it's good to get it over with, and you get them fresh in the morning. But I'll tell you something that's a little embarrassing, but I'll cop to it. I just had to sleep. So 4 a.m, I was like, I have to wake up at 5 to get the shower and then get there on time and everything. So I tried to sleep for an hour, poop my pants. Woke up, just poop my pants. 100%. Because the poop in the pants thing we've talked about in the podcast, where everybody has their annual stories.
Mm-hmm. I shit my pants a few months ago.
No. What was your excuse?
Farting. Too close to the sun.
Yeah.
It's 9 out of 10 times.
It happens, Chris.
9 out of 10 times. I'm too cavalier.
Too close to the sun. I had to though. I just had to get some sleep.
I understood. I understand completely. Yeah, and you started having the clear poops, right?
Oh, dude, it's
unlike anything you've ever seen before. You're pooping water. It's so strange, but you feel there's something very clean about it. It's dude, there's nothing left in you. There is nothing left in you. You've pooped 28 times, and there's nothing left.
That's a pretty accurate number, actually.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Oh, dude, it's it's cleansing. It's definitely cleansing. I think. Yeah, and then they'll tell you the thing you won't poop. It's okay. It's normal if you don't poop for another 2 or 3 days after that, which I didn't.
Right, because you have because you're not. That's why everyone's. I always find it so weird. It's people are oh, I ate something and I had a shit or whatever, and I'm like, well, you didn't shit what you ate. You're shitting what you ate a while ago. I'm sure there's something to it, but it's you're not shitting what you just ate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a great point.
You're pushing things out that are days old. Well, I'm glad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but mostly I was concerned with getting sick last weekend that we would forget because this is a big game. And I wasn't taking that many notes because I was I'm always invested, but I was so invested in this game that it's just even my notes are very minimal for me.
Yeah, it's because don't worry, I got notes. All right.
Are those typed?
Yeah, they're typed.
Oh my God.
When I play games like this, I keep my laptop nearby, on the coffee table. Basically, my recliner is adjacent to the coffee table, and I just leave it there, and I just type notes and then put it back down, and just as I go. But if it's a smaller game, I won't do that because the computer's distracting. But for games like this, I'm there's going to be so much to say, and writing it is going to be annoying. It
doesn't detract from the enjoyment of coming in and out constantly, though.
Yeah, dude, I got to be honest with you. I'm so fucking used to it that I think that's just the way I play games. I mean, when I would write a walkthrough, I'd play a game for 30 seconds, pause it and write, play the game for 30 seconds, pause it, write, play the game for 30 seconds, pause it, right. I mean, I'm so used to playing like that.
That's serious business.
I'm broken in that way. Not in that I don't enjoy it. I was saying that to Jaffe on Sacred Plus recently. I was he was saying I'm enjoying video games more than I've ever enjoyed them. And I'm I kind of am too. At least since I was a kid, where I'm I'm really into it. And I like playing the way I play. I used a walkthrough for this. Not a spoiler walkthrough, but just to play it quickly. Because
okay, I
played it in I did it in 30 hours. And
wow, you did it really fast. Okay.
Because there's a lot of QOL, quality of life shit in Final Fantasy V. The Pixel Remaster, I didn't use any of them except for walking fast.
Okay.
And I would sometimes shut off encounters if I was I got to just get to a save point or something. And because I don't like I don't like quick save.
Quick save is a little.
I don't trust it. It's a little weird, I don't think it's a cheat necessarily. I'm I just don't believe you. I need to go
really working.
Right. I need to go to the menu where you confirm and shit like that. I'm I just don't know if I believe you. But this version has a lot of QOL stuff, increasing experience and battle points and all that kind of stuff. And I only did that after I beat the game and I was trying to just max out all of the jobs. Cause I felt I don't want to play like that really. But if I want the platinum, I'm I'm not doing this. You know, like I'm not grinding for fucking days and days. I beat the game. I beat all the enemies in the game. I'm just trying to get all the classes. I'll get 4 times experience. That's fine.
That's still a lot. You did a lot. Yeah.
I did. I can't believe the percentage of people that, well, we can get into this a little later, but it's like, I love looking at trophy percentages because I think it's the only data we really have like externally about how people interact with games. And this is where the conclusive data that most people don't beat games comes from. And you see a game like this and it's like, man, 50% of people beat it. 20% of people got the platinum trophy. 1 in 5 people got the platinum trophy. That's pretty significant.
That is.
It's a testament to the game. And so let's get into Final Fantasy V and talk about it a little bit.
Baby. All right.
I'll introduce it for people. I mean, obviously, and I think most people listening know, but I'm sure many of you don't. Final Fantasy V was a mystery to us. And it came out in late 1992 for the Super Famicom from Squaresoft at the time. And we got Final Fantasy 1 in the West as Final Fantasy on NES. And then we got Final Fantasy 2, which was Final Fantasy 4. And that's one of our favorite games of all time. And we did a very deep conversation about that, I think back in 23, if not early 24. And you guys can go listen to that because that's a fucking fantastic game. That's a better game than this, I'll say that. But it's
close.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Like there's, so 5, so time goes on, we get 6 as 3, and then everything lines up again after that, 7, 8, 9 going on. And I remember this very clearly. In 1999, Final Fantasy Anthology comes out. I remember this because I was just starting 10th grade, and it was a huge deal because it was Final Fantasy 6, which I love, and Final Fantasy 5. And we had never gotten Final Fantasy 5 before. We were still missing in the West, and this would be ameliorated later, 2 and 3. We would get 2 in Final Fantasy, what was that called? Final Fantasy Chronicles, I guess, that came out in 2003 on PS1. And then Final Fantasy 3 would be released on DS as a remake, and that would be the first time we would get that. And I want to say that was 05, 06, something like that, maybe 07, even later. So 5 was like a great mystery to us. And what I remember, Dig, we were talking about ZSNES recently and all SNES 9X and all that shit.
Yeah.
Is that there was a fan translation of the game, and I did mess around with it when I was a kid because I had no shame then. I didn't give a fuck. I didn't think even twice about doing any of that kind of stuff when I was a kid. So that's why I forgive children for doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
That kind of stuff. And I was like, damn, there was other games too, like Bahamut Dragoon, I think, or Lagoon or something like that. That was like these SNES games that never came out here. But I never beat it and I never played it. And then when it came to PS1, I finally got through it and I played it. But I liked it. But I gotta say, dude, I had so many funny memories of playing it for the first time and getting through it. And the weird way I play video games and how I had to bend my not playing it like that. So I'll give you an example. Is like when Pokemon came out in 98, I really didn't know how to play it. And what I mean by that is it's like, no, go kind of like catch who you want. Right. And like you have a nice variety of maybe 12 or 15 Pokemon at the most.
Sure.
And, but I would capture every Pokemon and then I would level them up evenly. Now, this is something only a high school student with nothing to do would. And of course, you can tell why Pokemon started to break me later because 150 was very manageable. But now you're like in this insane range. And like I eventually stopped playing them like that. Probably around gold and silver because I was like, you really can't play them like that anymore. But I remember I was having these flashbacks, like these core memories. It's so funny, like these deep memories of like playing Final Fantasy V specifically with 4 Rangers. And
wow.
So somewhat deep in the game, I have having them all in the back row, all with bows and arrows. And I was like, shit, I played this game on PS1 like that, where I leveled everything up totally evenly and like just grinded for fucking scores of hours.
The OCD. It speaks to me.
So it was funny to like reconnect with that. And I think it's why I always liked Final Fantasy V. But I didn't like it as much as I like it now. Like, because I think this is probably the first time I played it like a normal person. Because even when it came to Game Boy Advance, which I was a senior in college when it came to Game Boy Advance, and I bought it and played it there, 6 came a little later, and that was dope as well. These were 5 Advance and 6 Advance is what the names of the titles are. So they're new translations. It's like I don't really remember how I played that. And I don't remember that particular instance really. I might have even written a guide for it or something. Like it didn't affect my enjoyment or lack of enjoyment for the game. It was just like, yeah, 5 is good. 5 is better than all of the old ones before it, except for 4, and not as good as pretty much anything that came after it through 9, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm like, no, 5 is probably like, I'm probably somewhere like 6, 4, 7, 5.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people would think that order. For sure.
It's great.
It really is.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, this was always an enigma to me, this game, because obviously, like you said, it came between two of our favorite video games of all time. And certainly two of our favorite JRPGs of all time, but I would argue two of the greatest video games of all time.
Certainly.
And that enigmatic thing of like, we know something came between these two games. Why did they hold it back from the West? What's the story here? You know, and just going in now and finding this gem. It's, first of all, it's kind of criminal that you held it back for the better part of 8 years from the West, because I think people really would have dug this game.
Definitely. They were so wrong about all that shit. They were so stupid. Dude, they were so stupid.
It was really, it was, I mean, they just had the wrong idea.
What do they think we were, like fucking Neanderthal men? Like, I don't understand. Like, they really had this thing. They're like, they won't get it.
Yeah. They had we
invented D&D. Like, what are you talking about? We're not going to get it.
Yeah, that's true. the whole idea of RPG came from the West, right? So it went back, and then we had to take. Yeah, it was this strange back and forth. But I really do think it's amazing. I think it would have done well at the time. It's interesting that it came out here after. That would be the same year, but months after Final Fantasy VIII, which is strange, right? And then I think I've heard theories. I'm not sure how bulletproof these theories are or how true they are, but that like everything you hear about this era of video games dealing from Japan coming over to the West, it was going to be too hard for us, right? I did think it was a pretty difficult game, surprisingly, which I enjoyed, which was one of the things I enjoyed about it. Because even with those quality of life pixel remaster hacks, if you will, I still found it pretty engrossing in terms of challenge. So that was cool. But dude, yeah, I mean, just a delightful game, a charming game. And what I'm hoping for here with Knockback is that we could turn some people on that haven't played it like I hadn't before doing it for the show, because I highly recommend it. It's such a fun experience. And I like the order you called out too. Now I haven't played any Final Fantasies really meaningfully beyond 8, but I think I would call out the same order. And I really like Final Fantasy 8. It's just like, a Dagon hot take.
Yeah, 8's fine. I just don't like the combat. Like, I don't like I've said this many times, but the game is easiest if you don't fight.
Yeah,
and that's very weird to me.
That is strange. They were in a weird era of like playing up the graphics or something and playing down, the gameplay.
I think they made a mistake. I think, Dave, sorry to interrupt you. I was just gonna say, they made a mistake in that. Like, I think a lot of developers feel, and sometimes reasonably so, and sometimes not, like, we got to reinvent the wheel. We can't do.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we like this.
It was a classic case of that.
Yeah, definitely. So with 9, it became much more traditional again.
But I love the order you called out. I think really makes a lot of sense. And I was surprised because I'm going in thinking there had to be a reason. This is some weird anomaly in between two great revered games. And it's not. Like, and the connective tissue is also there between 4 and 6. And there's a lot of foreshadowing of things they'll do, especially graphically and visually.
Definitely.
For 6.
Definitely.
Which is really cool.
It is. It's like the missing link visually between 4 and 6. Like there's sprites from 4. There are sprites from 6. Like the Mysidia wizard sprite is in the game, but so too are like the pub owner from Narsh sprites. It's interesting.
A good call out.
The towns have like the orange tops and like are much more cartoonish, like 4. By the time you get to 6, they look much more city-like and actually like what they look like. It's definitely, it's one of the notes I have. I'm so glad you noticed that. And of course you would. There's like a lot of, it is like the evolutionary. It's funny because I've been reading a lot about Darwinism recently and like speciation. And it's like how these different changes happen and then it becomes something else. And in fact, I brought something up. Let me see if I can. Yeah, this was on the fandom for this game, the fandom.com Wikipedia or wiki page about teasing future things about like what was going to come. And they say here, oh shit, let me see if I can just find these. Yeah. So Hironobu Sakaguchi was in charge of the overall design while everyone else carried around their ideas in their own plan books. So it's worth noting about 30 people made this game. Tetsuya Nomura, whose first big involvement with Final Fantasy was with Final Fantasy V, had jobs in mind, such as a ninja with a dog and a gambler who fought with dice and cards, among others.
Fucking love it.
Who was that? Shadow and Setzer, of course.
We love it.
Love it. So like, yeah, they were doing things here that would just come out in 6. And I love the gambler class. Like the idea of there just being I love Setzer. So
it's so neat, dude. It's so neat. You know what they did in this game, which dawned on me very early in the experience? They made it it felt a lot like Final Fantasy IV, but a little more levity, a little more goofiness, a little more cartooniness. Not just with the visuals, with the sprites doing the cartoon wide-eyed wild takes and stuff like that, but also just the amount of humor in the game. And then it seemed like they reversed course for 6 and then made it more serious. So this was kind of like, it's fun that it's kind of an offshoot. It's different than 4 and 6. It's different than its bookends in terms of tone, which I think in itself makes it worth playing because it is a little different. It's like if Final Fantasy IV had a little more comedy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I think it feels distinctly anime, which I don't think any other Final Fantasy game feels. I mean, definitely not 4, definitely not 6. The first 3 don't really have a feel because the stories are not really important. 7's not anime, in my opinion. 8 is maybe kind of anime. Squall's kind of anime.
Sure.
9 is definitely not anime. 10, I guess, is when I guess you would look at as the most anime one. But in just the emo, it's so funny how in a game made in 91 and into 92 can emote the way it does.
It's amazing.
So well. And you get not only the emotion of it, but like what they're trying to say. We're going to get really into this in 6. Hogue brought it up recently in another context. Like it was on Constellation. We were talking about the opera house scene. It's like,
oh, sure.
That is, I remember being like 10 years old when I first played the game, when I bought it. And I was like, whoa, like what the fuck? Why do I feel a certain way?
It's an emotional experience.
Yeah. And it's just, when you look at it, you're like, what is this? Like, it's just these sprites and these weird isometric, almost little areas that you're in at times.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And there's hints of that in this game.
Right.
There's some, especially towards the end and in the ending, and we'll get there, but like there's definitely some moments that, pull on your heartstrings in this game. It's definitely foreshadowing, of what they're going to be capable of when they get to the next thing.
I love the one scene where I think Lena is like saving them from a cave and she has the rope and she like keeps moving the rope and Bart's is like trying to.
That's so cute.
Yeah. It's like just a lot of really funny, weird so stuff in there. And yeah, there's real emotion too. There's death. And that we were talking about that with 4, the death of Tella, and what happens to Porum and Palom. It's like, Jesus Christ, you're really willing to go there, and they really do. The game's not as, I don't care as much about the characters in this game as I did about Final Fantasy IV's characters. So in that sense, it's not as deep, but they still don't shy away from that stuff, and it's pretty cool. In fact, it's a little bit of Rogue One kind of esque. Suicide mission sort of shit going on in this game towards the end, which is cool.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Yeah. They don't think they're coming back, these kids.
Right. And they watch their mentors all die.
Yes. Yeah, dude, that's a outstanding point. It's definitely true. Yeah. I wonder if that's another thing that held back the powers that be in Japan for bringing it to the West. Just like maybe this is too adult for those kids. This is like, with characters dying, and are they going to dig that in the West? Because this was even before the rise in popularity of manga and anime and kids getting really into that Eastern flavor, where it's like, it can be an adult storyline. It can be a little bit, it's not, we could take off the kids' gloves a little bit. It's not Saturday morning's fare, I wonder if that had anything to do with it. Eventually they would learn that we want what everybody else wants.
Yeah, it's like, but it is weird. I mean, but at the same time, you might be right, but it's like, again, 4 has like,
that's true.
The death of Tella, these young kids that seem to commit suicide on your behalf. Edward is like deeply fucking depressed. His wife dies, or his fiance dies.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Cecil they destroy Mist in the beginning and like kill everyone in the town. So it's like, I don't know if it's that. If it is, they totally misread what 4 was, and how that's a way darker game than 5. Way darker. It's darker than 6, and 6 is pretty dark.
It is.
6 is dark in an apocalyptic way. 4 is dark in like a really personal way. And
yeah, that's well said.
Yeah. Like there's something way like the King of Baron is like in some way way more sinister than Kefka, who was just like a madman
right from the beginning too.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I guess they say it did modestly. Final Fantasy 2 did modestly well in the US, but maybe it wasn't enough to kind of, encourage them to try to sell 5 in the state. Who knows? We have it now. That's the important thing. Right,
exactly. But I also think, there's something about it. Like I would like to know what their mentality is, because I think a lot of it has to do, when I wrote the history of Naughty Dog, I learned a lot about, and I've talked a lot about since, because the founders of the company went deep into it, is like cartridge allocation back in the day. And they were specifically talking about Genesis, but I'm sure it worked like this with Nintendo, and it might have even been worse with Nintendo because of the seal of quality and all their weird fucking bespoke relationships with everyone. But I wonder if it's like we Squaresoft was a small company. I mean, they were all kind of relatively small, comparable to what they are now. All of these companies, Bandai and Namco separately, Enix, which becomes merged with Square, Capcom, Konami, these are all pretty small entities. And that's why it's like, 10, 15, 20 people making these games. If you sell 1 million copies, you're fucking you did so well. You made an enormous amount of money. And I wonder if they looked at it and said, like, maybe we have too many other games to release. And this isn't one of the games that makes sense to release. But it's so it frustrates me that we don't know more about this process, because it does seem a little, it's not like defamatory. I don't give a shit about that. But it's like, what made you guys think that? What made it common? A common misconception that we couldn't play games. This goes all the way back to Super Mario 2. And and interestingly, this is only 4 years later. So it's not that crazy for them to have a similar mentality, to the point where after 4, Mystic Quest comes out, which they made specifically for the Western market, which is a comically easy game. I mean, it's ridiculous how easy it is. So it was so disappointing. I bought it actually later. I bought it on eBay in high school.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. And because I never owned it. I rented it and I didn't really like it. And I'm like, I'm going to sit and really play this and like understand this game. It was probably like $10, which is so funny, like complete, because no one wanted it. And it sucks. That game sucks. So it's interesting. And they call it Final Fantasy USA, I think.
Okay.
And so in the West, I think they did release it later on, but it's like, damn, why? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
Like, where did this come from? Is it something about arcade machines in like the late 70s, early 80s? Were they getting feedback like at Namco that, man, people are really struggling with X, Y, or Z? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, we have pinball wizards and shit in the West, or in that time leading up. And what would make you think we couldn't play these games? So I feel like there's more to it. Like there's got to be some sort of reason why, like an allocation of cartridges. Because I'm pretty sure, I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy that translated all that shit in the 90s for Square, translated 5. And he said that he finished it. And so, but they just were like, nah.
Yeah, forget it. I think there was some notion that Western gamers, especially American gamers, wanted action and stuff that was less cerebral too. You know what I mean? Like there was only a small fraction of gamers that wanted something that was a little more organizing inventory and, arranging your party and, like D&D-esque rather than just a brawler or a shooter. There was probably some notion of that as well, but it is weird. Yeah. Who was that? Doug forget. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I'll find it.
He was integral in a lot of those translations.
Ted Woolsey.
Woolsey.
Yeah. Who translated like a shit ton of things. I'm pretty sure he even translated Metal Gear Solid and shit like that.
Wow, that's cool. That's awesome.
But so it's so interesting because I know the same was true for 2. Like Final Fantasy 2 was translated for an NES release and they also opted not to do it. 3, I don't think they ever bothered with. And maybe it was the class system stuff that really put them off, but 1 had a class system. 3's is not that more robust. This is the first time that like it really gets kind of more crazy. Yeah. And maybe a little more sophisticated. But again, the West is the world of Ultima and Shadowgate and all these things that it's like, I don't know. I just don't know what they thought.
Yeah,
it would be fun to like really get that information at some point.
It would be like to get it for good and all, right? Like some clarification of like, what was the deal, you know? And then of course, once Final Fantasy VII came here and did what it did, then it was over.
Right,
obviously.
exactly.
Right,
and
that
then
was
we still had to wait in between like the releases, but they were getting them out here, and then they would start coming out day and date, which is awesome, you know. Yeah, so totally they understood it with 7. And I think because you were saying like it came out after these, so 5 and 6 came to PS1 after 8, and then 4 came with Chrono Trigger, then 1 and 2 came. But I think a lot of that was because it's like getting things in motion with 7 and being like, oh, I guess we've really fucked this up, you know.
Yeah, we were finally anointed,
right? and Enix was doing the same thing with Dragon Quest. So these were 2 different companies, and at the time, and they had the same idea. Like for some reason, we got 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Dragon Warrior, and then they're like, we're out. And 5, and like there were the SNES games didn't come for some reason. I still don't really get that because they were releasing a lot of SNES games, and some weird ones, right? Like I mean, ActRaiser is one of my favorite games on ever. And it's like you would release, like it's weird to me. I'm like, you would release this weird esoteric fucking game, but not Dragon Quest V. Doesn't really make any sense.
Well, the Americans like platforming,
right? Exactly.
Right. So.
I think that's part of it. The other thing that I wanted to bring up here, and we can get into this as much as you want, is I'm a huge Final Fantasy Tactics fan, as everyone knows. I love Final Fantasy Tactics. And 5 and Tactics share enormous amounts of with each other, specifically with the jobs. All of the jobs that, again, it's the out of order shit. We get Tactics in 98, and we don't really know better. So like we see the dancer class or whatever, the mime and all these things, and we're like, oh, this is Final Fantasy Tactics. And then it's not until a few years later when we play 5 on PS1, we're like, oh, like this is where all that shit comes from. They didn't make that up. Tactics actually is drawing deeply from Final Fantasy V, and I love that connection.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah,
because if you think about a lot of the jobs, like the classes, we had things like the ninja, the geomancer, the ranger, or maybe not the ranger, the berserker, summoner. All of that was in. We know some of those classes from 4, but we it seemed like they were ubiquitous, like any man classes starting in Tactics. And I just wanted to give a shout out to 5 because a lot of that stuff really began here. And I think that's cool. And we just didn't know.
A lot of us might not have known. Yeah. That's true. Yeah, my roommate Ducky, my old roommate Ducky, he's kind of an unofficial Knockback character now, right, at this point.
Yeah, definitely.
But he was a big Tactics guy, and I would watch him. I never played it myself, but I was never hands-on with it, but I did watch him play. And it is interesting to think, because I certainly didn't know that at the time, where this was coming from. And the job class was very foreign to me until I started playing this game, really. This was really new to me. And I got to tell you, man, I didn't think I was going to like it. And I'll tell you why. I was going into it a little grudgingly because I love my 4 and my 6, right? And my 7 and my 8 and so on and so forth. And just my JRPGs in general. I love the character. I love that the way those games do character. And I thought it was going to fuck with, you know, characters within, you know, with that sort of level of integrity and writing and, you know what I mean? The stuff, what the character is, the JRPG world I'm coming from, what that character is, their role, their job, you know, their specific job or their task in the party is really part of the fabric of what makes it their character, right? Whether we're talking about Yang or one of the ninjas, Edge or Cecil, you know, whatever they do, Tella, you know, Tella's a mage. You know what I mean? That's part of the character. So I thought it was going to mess with the character, but I have to say, it really didn't for me. This game takes measures to make sure those characters and their, you know, their personalities and their characteristics stay intact regardless of what you choose to make them, which was a pleasant surprise because I didn't think it was going to be that way. I thought they were going to throw character to the wind and say, no, it's about, you know, making it into a thing. Changing a warrior to a mage and changing a mage to a thief and so on. But the characters remain intact and you still get to play around with what they do, which was really kind of neat. I loved it.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that the game does retain its identity somehow through the class stuff, because I think Final Fantasy 1, 2s, and 3 stories are irrelevant. And so they're just whatever. So having like, especially with 3 and the interplay with classes and the way you level up strangely in 2 with what you do and what you use and all that kind of stuff, that's like more the focus than the characterization. And so it feels like on its face that you're going back to that style of Final Fantasy, which some people like. And yeah, they do. Now, I want to be clear from my perspective, and I'm sure you agree, it's like the characters are not nearly as good as they are in 4 and 6, primarily because of that. And you and I love Wild Arms. And one of the things that I think is really strong about Wild Arms is that there's only ever 3 playable characters. And you're with them basically the entire time. Sometimes someone leaves the party for a while and whatever, but like there's no new, when you're after like you play all their intros in Wild Arms, that's your party for the rest of the game. And I love that because you got to really know them. Yes. You got to know them as characters in an interplay. It's not like in 4, you don't really get to know Fusoya because you get him so late. You don't even really get to know Edge because you get him so late. As much as you know Kane and Cecil and Rosa and whatever, because you get them earlier. So the one thing that I really love about this game is that like you get the characters fairly quickly and you get to know them quickly. And it's very, again, anime and weird, like how they find each other. And like, it's kind of silly, but yeah, they all have personalities and the classes don't clash with that. But because none of them are the class, they're not able to rise up to the level of none of them of great character. Part of Locke's panache is that he's a thief. You know, part of Celis's, thing is that she's a Magitech knight. Like that's like, and if she was a thief, it would be weird. And if he was a Magitech knight, it would be weird. Yeah. But for some reason here, it doesn't matter. And so I totally agree with you. There's like a nice thread there, but it means that if 4 and 6 are mostly about story with combat trappings, which is what I think it's about, this game's more about combat with story trappings. And so there is an inversion there too. And,
definitely.
And I liked that. Like, because not everything needs to be 4 and 6. And 5 being like 4 and 6, I think would actually be kind of lame and probably make 6 specifically not as cool. So, because they're bouncing back and forth, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah. There's enough, the characters are definitely not as rich as the bookend, outings, but there's enough character building, and it's nice to have something different. I like that they kind of like took a flyer on this and made it like more about the combat and less about the character. And there's a lot of cliches with the characterizations and tropes, but it's still fun. You're still invested enough in the characters, and the characters still remain intact regardless of how you assign them, which is kind of tricky. You know what I mean? That they still manage that, and they do that with the story, and they do that by maintaining the sprites, for the, whatever quote unquote cut scenes and everything. You kind of see them in their original.
Yeah, it's not like a black default mage and a ranger and shit. It's just it's there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a very important point, I think, that they do keep the stylings kind of similar. You only see that shit in the menus and in combat.
Sure.
And each of them has like their own bespoke, unique like sprites for each class, which is kind of cool. But
I love that.
So a lot of work went into that, which I think is really cute. And they are cute characters, and they all have great personalities. Like I like Bart's Butts, as he was known when we first played him.
I love Butts.
I just love that character. I love his stupid chocobo Boko or whatever. And by the way, one of my favorite things of the cute anime shit, like I love when you find Boko later and he's like in a bed and he's sick. And they're like taking care of it. I'm like, this is so fucking awesome.
It's so fun, dude.
Yeah, it's
just charming.
It's really fun. And then, I like all the characters, but I like, why can't I say, what's the pirate's name? Faris.
Oh, Faris.
I love the pirate. Like she's so cool. And like how she's kind of, it reminds me a little bit of like Joan of Arc almost.
Absolutely.
And like kind of hiding who you are, but like people kind of know, and then it's obvious, and then people really respect you anyway, and you're kind of a leader of men. She's really cool. And I love her relationship with that dragon that drags around, Sildra, that drags around her ship. Yeah. I love that whole thing that she has like a dragon and they're not affected by the lack of wind for their ship. And really good
she still has a sea monster to tow her around.
Right. And then they kill him.
They do. Yeah, Sildra doesn't come back.
No, like he comes back as like a spirit at some point, right? And then and does something. I don't even remember anymore what he does. But So let's talk a little bit about the job system and the classes. How did you manage this, and like what did you do? Because I did so for I wanted to basically have two mages and then like a kind of a wild card character and then like a physical character.
Okay.
And I think I did that fairly well. So I had like Bart's as like a blue mage in the beginning, and I used blue magic is crazy fucking powerful in this game. And again, shout out to Strago and Final Fantasy 6, because again, we thought that I thought until I played 5, I'm like, oh, blue magic, this comes from 6. No, blue magic comes from Final Fantasy 5. So I had him as a blue mage, and then I would kind of cycle him through a bunch of shit. I had him as a beastmaster for a while because that's actually pretty important to be able to control enemies if you want, and so on. And then I had Lena and Galuf as mages most of the time, like white mage, black mage, summoner, time mage, mystic knight, like whatever kind of shit going on with that. And then I had Faris as like knight, monk, ninja, samurai, dragoon type shit.
Oh, wow. So, you weren't afraid to jump around.
Yeah. Like, well, it's important to, because when you max out a character's job, it behooves you to just move on to another job.
Yeah.
You know, like to keep tacking on your options for your various permutations. And then when you start unlocking them, you can use them in the freelance and the mime classes and like be insane, you know, if you want. So, and dude, Go-Go from
yes.
is in 5.
That's right.
So anyway, so what did you think of the classes, the job system, the expanded job system? What jobs did you like? I wonder, like, what was your final, when you fought X-Death, like do you remember what your party was and what their abilities were?
Yeah. I was very traditional. You know, I'm a purist, maybe too much so. So my biggest regrets at the end was I never dabbled in Thief. I never dabbled in Dragoon, although I was awfully tempted, and I'll tell you why. And I never dabbled in Blue Mage, which I'm intrigued with, but I never got to experiment with, because I had this, you know, again, it was like early on, I had this worry of changing too much. Let me just kind of like settle into one thing that seems to be working. And that actually did work. So maybe I changed each character only 2 or 3 times and then settled into a role.
Oh, interesting.
But for me, my biggest takeaway with that is I definitely want to play this game again completely differently than I did. The replay value here is pretty crazy for an RPG.
Definitely.
You know, by the time I was a quarter of the way through, maybe, ultimately, I'm like, oh, I'm doing this again.
And that gets into the whole job fiesta thing, right? Final Fantasy 5 4 job fiesta or whatever.
So, I mean, first of all, shout out to Sakaguchi and everybody who made this game to make it so that it could be so even-handed no matter what you come up with in terms of jobs and sculpting your party, that you could still make it work is insane levels of game design, especially for back then, dude. It's like pretty insane that you could do all these different, you know, permutations, and ultimately, I guess it would still work. I mean, some better than others, but no matter what you choose to go with, as long as you're committed, you could still get through the game, which is insane.
Yeah.
With the variety. But I took the Bart's character and I was like, my Bart's character,
Butts.
That's the player, sir. Butts. That's, by the way, it's the only fact I knew about this game going in.
Right.
Was those early emulator fan translations that his name was Butts. And the turtle was Guido or something.
Yeah, right.
I was like, what is going on? You know, what is going on with Final Fantasy 5? You know, inquiring minds need to know. So it's nice to know all this stuff now. Yeah, Bart's was my knight. And then I only ever took him to Berserker and left him there, knowing early on that was a really weird choice, because you basically have no control
right
over a very powerful character.
Just incredible strength, though, in your attacks.
Insane.
Yeah.
And he always putting him at the head of the party and putting him forward instead of back seemed to work. And dude, devastating. Once I got the rune axe, you know what I mean? Once I got the legendary axe, It was insane. Like, it was just like, why do I need to cast spells anymore? This is stronger than Meteor, you know, or Holy. So that it worked out, but it was sometimes frustrating. If they made the Berserker sometimes even a low percentage attack the party, that would have been a deal breaker. You know what I mean? If he just randomly turned on your party and stuff like that. But having no control was actually kind of comical sometimes, because all of a sudden you'd be in critical mode of like, oh shit, I'm going to lose this fight. And here comes Butts with his giant axe. And especially when the enemy was cute, you know, he would just devastate it. You know, and again, it just added, probably inadvertently, but to that cartooniness.
Yeah.
So it's entertaining. So I
Good.
kept it that way as
Good.
long as it worked out. Faris, I did the same thing as you. I started him at first, then her. We find out she's a her. Monk, took her to ninja, and then begrudgingly realized like I maxed out my ninja, took her to samurai. And dude, samurai was insane in this game.
Zenigage, that's the move, right?
Dude, I thought, all right, I'm just gonna 30 hours you played in, right? Probably about the 32-hour mark, I was like, I would use Zenigage and I would be like, dude, this is amazing. It's so OP. I love it. But why am I losing? I thought for 32 hours that certain enemies were taking money when they hit me.
Oh.
I didn't realize I was throwing money.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, what is that? Electrified shuriken? That's awesome. 32 hours. That's what I realize. This is why I'd get to a town.
That's awesome.
And try to load up on Phoenix Downs or Elixirs or something. I'd be like, why do I have $780? I just fought through an entire dungeon. And then I finally realized you're throwing fucking money. But dude, it's irresistible.
That rules.
I think I probably used the most abilities for the samurai because focus was good. Mm-hmm. Zenigage was good. Chakra was cool. What else did I use? Where was the one that began with an I? I'll look it up. It was just like a slash, like a ninja. You would run through and just slash everybody. But it was very randomized. A lot of times it wouldn't work, depending on what you were dealing with enemy-wise.
Yeah, that was a great Ayanuki.
Yes.
Unleash an attack that hits all enemies in an instant.
That was fun. And you get that late.
Right.
That's a level
5 you need 6. Your level 5 for that.
But that was a fun character. So that was my Faris. And then Lena, I started her as a black mage and then quickly realized I needed to have a summoner in the party.
Definitely.
And then took her to Beastmaster. But I'll tell you, man, I had a lot of trouble leveling up my summons. I don't know what I was doing wrong. Sometimes my magic centric characters, my Lena and my Galif, later Cryo, right? Mm-hmm. They would, even though I put them in the back, they would take the most damage, right? They were the weakest characters. So a lot of the time, I guess enough of the time they would lose a fight and not, experience. Get
experience. Yeah.
At the end of a battle.
I was like, it was urgent to level character or to revive characters before battles ended sometimes.
Oh, 100%. You had to pay extra close attention to that in this game.
Yeah, because you could squeak things out, but it wouldn't be worth it if you weren't getting the credit for it.
Yeah, you need to have that. And I should have been mindful of that earlier. But with that character, I realized late in the game, I think with Bahamut, Phoenix, Leviathan, and even Carbuncle, I couldn't even use them until very late in the game because I was stayed at level 3 for so long. So I had all these summons, but I couldn't use them.
Right.
So I definitely did something wrong with that. And leaving her at Beastmaster, it didn't really benefit me in the end. And then Galif, and then later Cryo was my white mage. And then I was once I realized I needed red mage, time mage for Comet and Meteor, that was the cost for entry. I was like, I need Comet, I need Meteor. We're definitely doing time mage, and I love that. That was amazing, and I love the way it looks. And so once I got to Exdeath and Neo Exdeath, it was Berserker, Beastmaster, Samurai, time mage.
Yeah, time mage is I love the time mage. I fell in love with the time mage in Tactics. I love their design in that specific game with like all the stars all over there. They have like a huge hat.
It's so neat.
It's really cool. Yeah, for me, I wrote it down because I meant to take a screenshot to verify, but I'm pretty sure this is what I did towards the end was Bart's I had as a Mystic Knight with blue and a blue mage using blue magic. So blue magic there's a trophy involved with blue magic, which is why I was involved with it at all this time, because I would use Strago a little bit in Final Fantasy VI, but not really. So I didn't explore. It's similar to Gao in Final Fantasy VI, where like a lot of work, which is kind of the evolution of the Beastmaster, where a lot of work has to go into really getting them powerful. And I just was like, there's just too many other good characters. Like, why use these guys when I can use Cyan and Edgar and stuff? And it's just like so much easier. But the reality is that like the blue mage, in my opinion, and I wonder if a lot of people feel like this, I'm like, this is crazy powerful if you know how to use it. So for people that are unaware, blue magic is when you're a blue mage or you have the blue mage skill, which I think is learn, attached to someone else.
Okay.
When an enemy uses one of the certain skills that can be learned on you, you learn it yourself. And there are just certain skills that I use over and over again. I have a list of them up here. So all of like the level X skills. So like level 5 death, level 4 Graviga, level 3 flare. That all means like if the enemy's level is divisible by that number, it just automatically happens to them. So
That's so cool.
So if you find like an enemy divisible by level 5, you can just kill them all instantly with level 5 Doom. And so things like that are really, really useful. And I also, all of the wind magic is only available. So like Arrow and Aroga and all of that are only available for blue mages, which is interesting. There's Flamethrower, which is like a really powerful flame attack. Dark Spark, which halves your level, like the enemy's level. So like that they're way weaker. And then the ones that I really, really loved a lot were White Wind, which is it restores each party's HP by how much HP you have. So it's That's like so cool. It is the most powerful healing spell in the game. And 1,000 Needles is really good too, because it's good in the early to mid game because it will do 1,000 damage every time it's used, no matter what. So there's just really good shit like that. And then Mighty Guard is awesome too. It casts Protect, Shell, and Float to the entire party instantly.
That's huge.
And it's massive because Shell and Protect become vital later on.
You need it.
Yeah. And so that spell costs a lot of HP. I think it's like 70 MP, which is like maybe the most of anything in the game.
But
heavy. It's like it just gets it out of the way. And I found it essential for X-Death because he's pretty tough. He starts going like the X-Death, Neo X-Death or whatever starts like casting crazy spells when he gets like below half damage. So I found the blue mage to be really, really useful. And then I love the Mystic Knight. And I guess you didn't really mess around with it, but it's kind of cool. It reminds me of that guy I love in that puts his sword on fire in Game of Thrones.
Oh, Beric.
Yeah. Where basically you can equip yourself like a knight, but you learn spells and you have to use a turn to cast a spell on your sword. And then that sword does physical damage plus the magic damage of whatever you've equipped. So you can cast like just ice magic on it or whatever, but you can also cast like ultimately like flare on it or
holy shit.
And they become mega powerful. But
if I knew that, I would have definitely done that to Bart's probably.
And so when you pull, if you go back and play, you can mess around with those. And then Lena and Galuf, I did a little bit more simply. Lena, I ultimately ended up as a white mage with time magic, and Galuf is a black mage with summoner magic. So like having a healer and like a completely offensive magic user.
That's smart.
One thing that I did mess around with a little bit is red magic. It takes a long time to level up red magic. It's like one of the hardest things to do because the last thing you get, and I don't know, did you mess around with red mage at all?
No.
So if you get it leveled all the way up, you get twin casting basically. Like you can cast 2 spells a turn. Or summon twice in a turn, or do
That's
what like
fucking amazing.
But it takes one of those spaces, and red, because this is what complicates things a little bit, is like red magic itself is kind of useless because it basically allows you to use white and black magic at the same time, but only up to level 3. So you can have access to both spell sets, but you can't use them beyond level 3. So really the reason you would learn red magic is to get that dual casting ability and then attach it to someone else. But if if you do that, then you really have like you have a one-dimensional white mage that can cast twice, or a one-dimensional summoner that can summon twice, but you can't do much more than that. So
they tempered it,
right?
They nerfed it a little bit,
right? Which I think is smart.
That is smart. So you got to balance it.
So I did call those in every once in a while, and it would like basically make them straight up black or straight up white mages, and then have them dual cast, which would be 2 times flare, or casting like Arise twice or something like that, which is huge. Like just having that extra turn allows you to kind of get back to health really quickly, which is nice.
Yeah, that would have been helpful. That would have been definitely helpful. Who cast? Was it the Blue Mage that had life or Phoenix Down Arise?
Because White Mage is Arise, but that's like level 7 magic.
Yeah, I only got to 6. Shit.
And
yeah, I have to figure that out.
That heals you. That revives you and heals you completely.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah, I never got that. I'm over here spamming Phoenix Downs and high potions, Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so now I know what to do going back in. That's two. Those things you just described, are especially Blue Mage. Those are awfully tempting. And Mystic Knight. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, the Mystic Knight's cool. And then for Faris, she learned like all of the physical stuff, but I ultimately settled in with Samurai and equip armor so to your point, it seems like such a waste of an ability to like equip armor, equip katana, like whatever, but it's like, no, like it just makes her way stronger to keep her on the front row. And then use Zenigage, because there comes a point where you do have so much money that it doesn't matter. Or if you don't need it, like it becomes essential. To me, it is, even if it's money, it's still broken in my opinion. Like it's deeply broken.
It's too overpowered.
In my opinion, I'm like, it's very useful. It is. It's incredibly useful. And I don't think the game's economy, we always talk about economies in role-playing games. Like I think the economy is very generous. So there really is no penalty. Like in the most recent Metaphor Refantasio, the recent Atlas role-playing game, there's a character that throws money in that game too, but it's like and it's really powerful, but it's detrimental because it's like you really need the money. Like there's not that much money, So
you got to make a choice.
Right. But it's like, it can really get you out of a squeeze you out of an issue, but it really is like fucking detrimental to your economics. In this game, I didn't feel quite like that towards the end of the game, especially when you get all the most powerful weapons you get automatically without having to pay for them. Yes. And there comes a point where you get to the last dungeons and the end of the game is there. It's like there's no reason to save your money, unless you should save a little if you need to like exit to get cottages and Phoenix Downs and shit. But so Faris was a little boring for me because I was like, Samurai equip armor is probably the best way to keep her alive. And so that's what I ultimately ended up doing. But I explored pretty much all of the classes at some point.
That's smart.
I'm looking here. Yeah. So like Thief is cool. It has some out of battle advantages. Like you can, if you have a thief, you won't get attacked from behind. And
that's cool. I didn't know that.
And it'll
just
show
in the party,
right? Like just in your party, and it will show secret passages. Like sometimes you can walk into like the wall.
I knew about.
Let me see here. What else?
I knew I was sacrificing that.
We talked about the mime. The mime is crazy powerful because you can mimic like previous attacks and just do it in a cycle, basically like a never-ending cycle of destruction. Like,
but not available until you beat that one boss, right?
Go. And then the Geomancer is really easy to learn. I wasn't really crazy about this class. It's a cool idea, and again, it returns in Final Fantasy Tactics, but it's about the idea of like kind of communing with your environment, and like if you're in like a rocky place, like you can use earth magic style stuff. Magic. If you're in a grasslands, I think you use wind magic kind of thing. It's a cool idea, but not for me. The Bard class is actually, we were talking about this, and this is what I cut out of Constellation, I was like, the Bard class is actually crazy powerful in certain situations, because we're used to the Bard class from Final Fantasy IV and Edward, and how useless it is, how he literally can hide from battle because he's so useless. Like you can just take him out of battle. In this one, you learn songs from certain people you talk to. I think all of them are optional. So if you find certain songs, they're incredibly powerful against like undead enemies and so on and so forth. And there's one dungeon, I can't remember what it is in the game, where it's like crazy. Like you just a class of 4 bards and you're like totally fine.
I love that you could even do that. That is amazing that you could even make it 4 of whatever you want. If you want to do 4 of the same thing, totally fine.
Let's see what else. What else here? The ninja's great. They just take a lot of damage, and it's hard to keep them alive, but they can throw, obviously, just like Edge. And First Strike is pretty good too, like giving you the first attack no matter what. Which I
definitely use that. Yeah.
I like the Ranger. The Ranger is a great back row physical attacker, which is cool. So they don't take a ton of damage. And the aim and rapid fire attacks are really, really useful. Like rapid fire allows you to attack 4 times, basically.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What weapon does the ranger use? A sword?
The bow.
The bow. Okay. That was the
which
bow.
would be
okay.
like, I guess, Rosa.
Yeah.
And then in 4. And then let's see what else here. So Dancer is cool. I didn't really experiment with the Dancer. The Dancer was always intimidating to me. But the one thing that's really useful is that there's only the Dancer can equip the ribbon, which is the accessory that can stop you from getting any status elements at all. And then you can unlock equip ribbon for some other character. So that's a reason why you would maybe want to mess around with Dancer. Let's see what else.
Yeah, you
here.
have 2 characters that could be unaffected by any ailment states or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that.
And then Dragoon. Yeah, we know all about the Dragoon and lancing and all of that and jumping. And then Chemist, which is another Final Fantasy Tactics class that comes from Final Fantasy V. And they're kind of like healers or like item users. But what's really cool is their whole ability to mix items. And I was having problems with the secret bosses in the game, and I went and looked up some strategies, and it's like the mix skill actually comes in really handy with those enemies. You can mix like dragon fangs with all these different items, and it fucks them up in like major ways. Like it will make them old or like half their levels and do all sorts of stuff. So if you know how to use the Chemist, it can be pretty useful.
I feel like they were encouraging the Chemist with the amount of ingredients that you find.
Yeah.
It was pretty, at a certain point, I was like, should I be dabbling with this a little bit? Maybe I will next time, because it does sound interesting. It sounds like one of the jobs that would add the most variety to the game and do something a little offbeat from like the melee and mage, melee and magic sort of thing. Well, in fairness, I did, mess with the samurai too, which is, that's a melee-ish, melee light. But yeah. The economy is interesting, Kyle, in this game. I feel like they definitely, even if they didn't load you up with gil, like you were saying, you always find items, especially later in the game when you get those legendary weapons and they're still giving you stuff.
Yeah.
You're still finding all sorts of shit in chests in dungeons, right? It's like giving you money because you just go to the shop and sell things. And then they do that thing where certain items are like these weird anomalies that are worth a lot of money. It's like, sometimes like Excalibur is worth a little bit of money, and something that you think would be generally worthless is worth like a fortune, which is that they do this cool thing. So if you're paying attention to it, you should never really be hard up for money. Thank God, because I realized so late in the game that I was throwing money at enemies, constantly. But I couldn't do the old school thing. I think you and I have talked about this before with JRPGs, where you kind of hoard. And you're afraid, even as you're powering up, getting better weapons, better armor, you're holding on to the old stuff. I found that I couldn't do that in this game. If I wanted to load up with high potions and Phoenix Downs and cottages, I'd have to sell some stuff that I found. But I had no problem doing that. I let go a little bit of that OCD, And so I was never hard up for money, even with using Zenigage so much, which is fortunate.
Yeah, interesting. I was a little bit opposite in the sense that if you think about 6, for instance, and Cyan uses like a certain sort of like, kind of sword or whatever, when you get the next one, that no one else will use it. So use that except for him. So you can just sell the old stuff and not be worried about if you will need it later. And in this game, I never knew, because I was switching classes so much. I'm like, I'm really loath to sell anything, because so what I would do is I would try to keep like 2 or 3 of the strongest rods, 2 or 3 of the strongest heavy armors, 2 or 3 of the strongest shields or whatever, and then cycle them out from the bottom when I would get a new one. That way I didn't have to spend more money on shit to re-equip everyone. And I found that made the economy a little more scarce, but I still think it's very generous. Like there's plenty of money in the game. So it was,
that would change it, right? If you were kind of open to changing classes, for sure. But I was like, by the time I was like 10 hours in, I was like, this guy's staying a Beastmaster. Let's just worry about the whips, and I don't have to worry about bows or harps or, any of those other things.
There's no real penalty to playing like that, because as I understand, you're leveling up akin to like the thing you're equipped to at that time, but you're not getting permanent stat increases. I don't think you're tailoring your character. So in some sense, it makes sense to make a mage. And then if you made your mage late in the game into a knight, it's like, well, that works. You can do that, but your stats are actually kind of mage centric still. You're going to be a weak knight. So the game does try to kind of cater you towards a certain thing, as opposed to other, like Metaphor is a good example where when you because that has a class, like a job system just like this, but like when you get all the way and max out a job, there's permanent stat increases that like encourages you to try out all the jobs, just because even if you leave that job, your plus 10 strength or whatever will stay.
Okay.
And so Final Fantasy V doesn't really have that. And so I do think the game doesn't suffer a great deal from playing it the way you do. In fact, I think that you could argue that the game begs you to play it that way in some sense. And it becomes harder if you don't.
Yeah, I think, definitely. You could definitely saddle yourself with some adversity if you jump around too much. But it's kind of more fun to play that way. I found generally if I wasn't avoiding encounters and I wasn't running once I was in battles, in other words, gaining that experience points and really making my way, even without the inadvertent grinding and stuff, which I do a lot of in RPGs, because I have this stance of like, this should feel like a quest. Like I should get lost. I'm very traditional. Like I'm very purist when it comes to that. Like this should feel like Lord of the Rings. Like I'm lost out here. I don't want hints. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That type of thing. I found that. So generally I found that I was kind of right where I should have been, as long as I wasn't using those quality of life things to get out of harm's way. Right. And again, like give the creators their propers, right? Their flowers. Like this is like a beautifully designed game in that sense, where it really felt like I was doing it right, even though there's a million ways to do it. I think that's really good game design.
Yeah, I agree. Oops, I dropped my pen. There we go. All right, let's go through. I have a bunch of notes here about the story. I guess we can get into a lot of the finer parts here. So I love the way the game begins with the King of Tycoon and the Wind Crystal. And obviously this game does revolve around the crystals yet again. It's really not until 6 that they get away from this, although in 6 they just kind of make them into espers. You don't really appreciate that until you play them all in sequence and you're like, oh yeah, like the esper is not as unique as it actually seemed. It was an evolution of what they were already doing.
Right.
In some sense. But so the Wind Crystal specifically that the King of Tycoon oversees is breaking and the wind stops, which I think is so cool. It's such a cool touch. I was thinking about if Final Fantasy V was ever remade. And in fact, I think there are Final Fantasy V related animes, so they might get into that. I've never seen them, but representing that, the stopping of ship commerce, like a montage of shots, like a shot of a grain, silo with its windmill stopping and all of these different things and grass fluttering and then it stops and all of the rest and like the consequences of that. I think it's pretty cool. I like the way it starts in that there's a meteor that has fallen nearby that they think is involved in it. And I love how comical and weird the meteor shit is. Like the meteor is still just, and you realize later the meteor is kind of like a ship. So it makes a little bit more sense, but it's like, it just still exists there. And Bart's and Boko stumble upon it and so on and so forth. We meet Lena and Galuf a little bit later. What do you think about the way the story starts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice return to Final Fantasy with the tropes and cliches, but then, there's a departure in the story, right? You get Bart's, who's like the player surrogate or the proxy. So he's a fun character, but he's probably arguably pretty quickly the least interesting character, even though he's the head of your party. And then you meet this colorful group of characters, you're collecting, you're going along and meeting these fun characters, this princess and this reluctant pirate princess who's under disguise of a pirate. She's the Princess Jasmine. She doesn't want to be royalty. She wants to go out and have adventures, right? And then the old man, I thought of Galuf as like the old man, maybe just like the dad instead of the grandpa, like the senile mage, who's definitely got like some sort of amnesia, but he turns out to be a grandpa too. But I like give me the Final Fantasy, not even just the fantasy, but the Final Fantasy cliches. I love returning to this world. I love the mainstay things that they do that makes it Final Fantasy. Like I'm here for that. I don't need it to be like the most heady fantasy story ever created. I just want it to be fun, and this is. And you get invested in the characters and there's some feels in there as well. But I like this game for the overall presentation is gorgeous. And I know the Pixel Remaster editions have a lot to do with that. But it's just fun.
Did you play on PC?
No, I played on Switch.
Oh, on Switch. Yeah, that's a good place to play.
Yep. Yeah, so and the Pixel Remasters is just so beautifully done. You know, as you're saying, like these little chibi sprites and the level of storytelling and the clarity of everything, you know exactly what's going on, whether it's gameplay or cutscene, right? And then just putting that modern day polish, especially on the effects. I think the effects animation in this is like a masterclass. It's gorgeous,
yeah, it
whether
really
it's the elemental stuff or the spell casting. And it's not just the colors and it's not just the way it's treated graphically, but like the way it's animated is really beautifully done. You know, it's really beautifully realized. And it's just like better than it needs to be. You know, it just keeps you wanting to play. Like I was thinking about it all day. You know, I'm working my day job. I'm like, I can't wait till it's quiet tonight and I can spend a few hours with this game. Like that's what you want.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. And I was surprised by how charming I felt like it was because I really didn't remember very much of the game at all. I've talked about this in the past with like Wild Arms 2 and other games where I'm like, dude, it's crazy how little I remember about this considering I know I've beaten it. Like I remember. So it's cool that there's like a little bit of a nice panache to the story. It's very different than 4 and 6, which obviously kind of sandwich it. And yeah, so I appreciated that. And then the one thing that this game does have a problem with, I think, is pacing. Like things just kind of happen very quickly. So by the time we have like, it's before we find Faris, but you get to Faris and then they're like, let's just steal the ship. Like this all happens within like an hour or so, or a couple of hours of each other. And so like they stumble upon this place and they're like, and then I think Galuf convinces them to steal Faris's ship. And obviously that goes haywire, but she ultimately ends up joining them as well. And I actually do love the scene. There's a scene where we realize that Faris is a woman, or like she reveals herself to be a woman, but there's actually a scene before that where Bart goes into her bedroom and sees her sleeping. And it's kind of like interesting because you're like, I know she's a woman. So, but I wonder when you're first playing it, if you're like, what the fuck was that all about? Like, is he like into this dude or something? And then you find out later that she's like a sexy woman instead. And they don't need the wind because, as we said earlier, they have Sildra, who is a sea dragon that drags their ship around, which I think is really, really super cool. And she has like a really nice relationship with the dragon. And much like some of the other creatures in the game that we meet, Sildra ultimately uses the rest of his or her power and life energy to help the party and kind of kills itself as a result, which is sad. Did you notice I wish I wrote down the specific location name. I didn't, but there's a cave you go into in the beginning when you're Lena, Galuf, and Bartz, and it's like it's got Mist Cave feels in like an insane way, doesn't it? Like from Final Fantasy IV, the music and the palette and all of the rest. I'm like, dude, this is so crazy.
Total callback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like we were going to run into Tella somewhere.
Yeah, I was thinking of Tella a lot. He was probably the main character I was thinking about in the first hours, the early hours of this game. Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely there's a lot of callbacks. There's a lot of a lot of nostalgia tied to it because again, it's coming out of that, but then it's going in, and you see where it's coming out of, and you see where it's going to, and it's kind of the middle ground, and it makes it different. You know what I mean? It's that outing in between that makes it feel so different. But the characters are fun. Like what they do with Faris, there's these plot twists, these unnecessary but fun plot twists. Mm-hmm. Like who's that handsome? I don't know if they refer to him as handsome or pretty, but like they definitely emphasize like, wow, that's a very attractive head pirate.
Right.
Turned out to be a girl. Then Faris not only turns out to be a female pirate, but turns out to be Lena's sister, who's a princess of Tycoon. Right, another princess. So they keep doing these reveals and making, tying the characters together and giving them histories and origins. That again, like, was that really necessary for an RPG that came out in 1992? Probably not, but it gives it that quality. You know what I mean? It gives it that fun. And if you're I guess you could come along, especially in this game with a job system, and just play it in a utilitarian fashion where it's like I'm just coming for the gameplay and to beat monsters and do the whole fantasy thing. But the story was really kind of fun. It was really cute.
Well, I think that's the big differentiator for me between Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy and why I like them both a lot. Love them both, but that I get different things out of them to this day. And one, like the Dragon Quest games are gameplay games, like turn-based. I like just grinding. I like menu-based fighting, and I like equipping new items and very grindy and all the rest. And then Final Fantasy, I think, takes it into a more story-driven kind of way where they both interact with each other really well on the market, in my opinion. And kind of, I think that's why there's a lot of crossover fans between them, is because they do give you totally different things. And I think that's true all the way through Dragon Quest 11. Like I played Dragon Quest 11 for 130 hours, and I don't remember what the hell it was about at all. Like,
it's so hard to retain that
yeah,
stuff.
I just don't remember, So they ultimately, the wind crystal ends up shattering. And that's kind of the thing about this game, is that they're basically too late to do anything about any of the crystals being destroyed. But when the crystals are destroyed, and when they get to them, so they start with the wind one, and then they go to water and fire, I think after that, they get new classes. I think this is a nice way to dole them out as opposed to making them immediately available. Tactics later on has like kind of a skill tree system, as it wasn't really presented like this, but it's like, you need to be level this on this, and you need to be this level, and then you'll unlock this thing. Or like, this game's just like, here's just everything, but and you can use it however you want, but you just need to get that far in the story, which I think is nice. So ultimately they end up going after the water crystal, and they're too late there as well. But again, we get more and more unlocked. We go to the ship graveyard at that point, which is kind of cool. The water crystal is in a town called Waltz, and Sildra, this is when Sildra gets sucked into the whirlpool. The ship becomes kind of useless. That's when we go to the ship graveyard, and then we end up in the town of Carwyn, and so on and so forth. So things develop pretty well from here. It's sad at this point. Hiryu, the Wind Drake, gets sick, and they need to go get him this like special kind of dragon grass to revive him. But he comes back ultimately.
He does. Yeah, they don't kill poor Hiryu, thank God. That's Lena's Wind Drake, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's so cute.
And so at that point too, when all the stuff with the Wind Drake's happening, as you noted, we find out that Lena and Faris are sisters, and Faris was, I guess, known as Sarisa or whatever. It's I don't. What did you think about this whole twist?
I like that she has the other name, but they just double down on Faris for the rest of the game,
right,
even though that's clearly not her name. Like, they very rarely even bring up the Sarissa thing. It's only like the old mother hen, like the old nanny at Tycoon, that still calls her that. I guess that, one of the women that raised them. It's one of those things. It's like such a cute little touch. I think that you called out the ship graveyard too, which I forgot about. I'm glad you said that, because there's something interesting in this game too that I don't remember in other RPGs, where they dabble in like overworld sort of gameplay, like world bounding gameplay things, like climbing and jumping and falling into pits, that really ultimately doesn't work very well. So I'm glad this was like the only time I remember that they really kind of invested in this sort of like, it's just short of jumping with a jump button, right? They put those little gameplay mechanics in that they didn't seem to largely return to, but they definitely exist in this game and give it like a very unique characteristic. But it was goofy the way they handled it, like a character climbing up a vine, but it's just moving without the legs.
Yeah,
and arms
it's very
moving,
cute. Yeah, there's that one scene where he ducks. You have to duck under the windows when you're walking. It's so cute.
In the prison.
Yeah, in the prison, right. And,
the jail,
and it's
right?
just like dragging across the ground. Very cute.
It's adorable.
Yeah, it is.
But it's so, again, it lends that humor, and I don't know if it was intended or not, but it just works. But that's definitely something I realized, like, wow, he has to jump in this pirate graveyard from like platform or deck to get across the ship, the planks of the ship or whatever. And I was like, wow, and climbing the ropes, like you mentioned earlier. It's very interesting how they started to go into that territory and then seem to pull it back after this.
Let's see here. So, yes. So this is actually, so during the return to Waltz and kind of the danger of the water crystal, Sildra does save the party. The tower that you're in kind of crumbles, and but he dies. And I wrote my notes here again so fast, like everything just happens so fast. Now you can't really judge it too badly. The game it's a 1992 SNES game. It's an early Super Famicom game. So they're already going, as you said earlier, above and beyond. And they're not going to have like the level of exposition in 6 is actually pretty incredible when you think about it, comparable to it. But they're not there yet. So I don't hold it against them too badly. I have an aside here in my notes that I wanted to ask you about. What did you think about truncating the player base to 4 characters from 5 in this one? 4 is it's funny, man. You go from 4 to 5 to 4 to 3 with 7. I don't know what the perfect number is. 4 seems appropriate to me. 5 is a lot. This is really all about just enemy balancing, though, because it's just about how much HP you're going to give enemies and all the rest. So it doesn't matter that much. But what did you think about moving back to 5 or from 5 to 4? And they stay with that for 6.
Yeah, I like 4. 4 with the job system, for me, I think 5 would have been way too stressful. It's just like I was already stressed out enough with managing 4. And 4 just gives you, even job system or no, it gives you the ability to have a melee character, to have somebody, with physical striking force, to have a white mage, to have a black mage, to have all your bases covered in terms of abilities. And 3 is not enough. 5 would stress me out. That's just for me. 5 would be fun in a way because just managing 5 would be a point of pride, I think. But that's too much multitasking for me. 4 is like right in the right spot for me.
Yeah, if Galuf lived and Kryl joined, maybe that would be like a 5th.
Exactly.
I didn't really remember the story very well. Like ultimately, and I love that they do this just for the story and the ease of it. It's like she just like kind of takes over his spot and gets all of his like stats and all that, which is great.
It's so fun, dude.
But I was wondering,
and 3 females.
Right, exactly. It's cool. It's super cool. Yeah, 3 girls.
So cool.
But I was wondering in my mind, I'm like, they don't go to 5, do they? Is that like, that's not like a big twist here or something? I didn't really remember, but they didn't ultimately. I didn't remember Galuf.
No.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you before we move on back to the story is active time battle. Obviously, we're familiar with it now at this point. Really introduced in 4. How do you feel about it? Did you mess around with the battle pacing? I had it very fast.
No,
to make it
I
go
left
quickly.
it at default.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
You did mess around with that a little bit?
Yeah, it makes the game harder, but like you just go quicker because the enemies they're computers, so they just respond like instantaneously, but it makes you kind of go a little quicker. So I did mess around with that. But
yeah, active time battle's fun.
Yeah, it is.
I love it because you got to really be on your toes. You got to know what you're doing. You got to have a plan. If that fails, with quick save and everything, if that fails, you're going right back into the battle. So what's the big deal? You know what I mean? May even be a little too easy with quick save and those quality of life things. I understand why they do them because video games have changed and players have changed largely. Not everybody's an old man like me, but yeah, but the active time system, I think is like, I think it just this game in the gameplay just feels to me like a JRPG should feel. It just feels great. It felt natural getting around the menus. Once you get ahead of steam and once you get acclimated after a few minutes, it's just like second nature. And even though you're managing a lot, when it comes to your party and their abilities and their jobs, their inventories, attacking, defending, healing, having a plan for what's next, visiting shops, visiting towns, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot that you're thinking about. But I feel like it's just the right amount. Everything's kind of expertly crafted to feel fun and appealing and like you want to get back to it even when the going gets tough. I was really surprised how great this game was. It just felt like really, really well crafted.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely was. Back to the story. So ultimately the water crystal's fucked. And so that's 2 crystals down. And now they realize that they need to kind of get to Karnak and the fire crystal. When they arrive there, they are arrested. This is where they get thrown in the prison, like you said, and we like have to sneak out. But we run into Sid, and this version of Sid in Final Fantasy for his 3rd time at this point, and his daughter Mid. That's not very nice. Why do they call her that?
I love Mid.
How can you do that? How can you call her that? So what's cool about them is that they have like some sort of ship. So Sid is building some sort of ship. What's cool first is that Sid breaks them out, basically convinces the queen that they're needed the queen thinks that they're like in on some like bullshit with these wolf creatures. You actually meet one of the wolf creatures later and realize that they're not like what they seem.
Love that shit.
But Sid kind of convinces her like these people are kind of imperative to fixing our problem with the fire crystal. And they have a ship that runs, I guess, on fire. It's like a fire powered ship. I think it's literally what it's called. And they have to go kind of take care of this as well. And ultimately I think the entire like area explodes because of the fire crystal exploding. And you start kind of meeting these other characters that are important to the story, like these shadow characters that are all older than our party, that are kind of in on this Final Fantasy IV style story, I guess. It was funny. I wrote this in my notes, Dig, and I wonder what you think of it. Is like Final Fantasy IV was like the Earth and then the Moon. Final Fantasy V is like these two worlds and then this ethereal space between them. And then 6 is like the world of balance and the world of ruin and the floating continent and all of that. And so like it's all about different worlds. And this is when they introduced that into the game. What did you think about this twist of there being kind of another place?
Yeah, this whole interdimensional thing.
Yeah.
It's cool because it opens up the world, and it's so clever to put in a video game because you could just flip it. You know what I mean? You could you're building this whole, it's like what they do in some games where you're on a Earth or an Earth-like planet and then you go to space. It's like another version of that. Mm-hmm. It's like another version of outer space, and you know, the mystery with the interdimensional thing and how creepy and Lovecrafty and that could kind of get, especially later when you find the town that's caught in the middle of the rift and, you know, you have to warp into it. It's not even on the map. It's really cool. It adds a lot of mystery, and it adds a sinister element too when you tie that in with X-Death and the whole thing is going on, and the origins, you know, our current heroes, but the old heroes that, you know, fought this fight once. And, you know, and again, you know, like you had already mentioned later on in the game, and spoilers, but, you know, the party has to, you know, leave their own world in order to save it, with no promise of returning, probably never being able to return, which is like the ultimate hero's sacrifice, right?
Definitely.
So it's just really, and it's kids. So it's mostly kids. So it's actually really cool. You know, you have that component, which is very anime-like. It's super fun. You know, it's a nice setup for a story and for the drama. And I love what you said too, Kyle, about there's this sort of misleading thing where they're on this chase to protect the crystals and then the remaining crystals, when, you know, it's kind of like this thing of, you know, it's this misleading thing. It's misleading you because, you know, eventually they can't catch up and the crystal breaks and it happens over and over again. But I like that they do it under the guise of like they're trying to protect the remaining crystals. And this game did that to me, though.
Yeah.
This game had me off balance as far as I know I was mentioning this to you in Constellation, which we had to ultimately cut out, which was like, I didn't know which way was up in terms of how close I was to the end of this game. They kept throwing you off balance with opening up. It's like, you know, it was like doing the Final Form thing, but with the worlds. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, I would feel a couple of times like I was close to the end, and then the game would extend. And in some cases, like feel like it almost doubled. It was like, oh, I'm not even close to the end. It had a lot of really cool surprises with that, which I found fun.
Yeah, the games get progressively longer. I mean, I guess that makes sense, but they do find ways to kind of linger, which is good. And by the time you get to 6, the game gets really long. 7 is where I think things start to kind of peter out, because I don't think you want to. Some people do, but you don't want like 100-hour game or like a story, maybe with a side quest and everything. But
that's long.
But here, and that's like very Dragon Quest, like, you know, 7, 8. Anyway, so ultimately, like you said, it's not even really worth going into like all of the different details leading into discovering the true nature of X-Death in this other world in some sense, because like it just happens over and over again. There are some cool things. Like I liked going to the town of Lix, unfortunate name, Lix. That's Bartz's hometown, and you learn more about him, which is kind of cool. It's got shades of Final Fantasy VII and going to their hometown. You realize that he was raised by this guy named Dorgan. And did you pick up that his sprite is like a mixture of, and I don't think this is intentional, but it's like Edgar and Sabin together from 6. It's like really crazy. It's got like the broadness of Sabin, but like the cape and the hair of Edgar. I was like, geez, dude, that's so crazy. The evolutionary step between these games.
Yeah. Now that you mention that, it does make sense. I didn't see it though. But now that I'm thinking of it, yeah, it does seem like those characters would be successors of Dorgan.
And it's cool that, again, Final Fantasy VI shades here with Bartz has like a series of dreams when he goes home, which is cool too. And you learn more about his past. And he kind of specifically remembers his mom's death. He goes to the gravesite and all of the rest. So quite a bit of pain. And this guy's obviously running from something. And that's pretty cool that you get a taste of that, which I appreciated. So I wanted to make sure to note that as well. Let's see here.
Yeah, it was unfair about that. You do get a little Bart's origins after a little while, and he becomes a more fleshed out character. And you find out he's the successor of a hero. You know what I mean? Like he's like there's a lineage there. He's not the first one in his family to do this. You do find that out eventually. So that was kind of neat. I like that there was a party before them. You know, they're kind of inheriting the baton, if you will.
So at this point in the story, the crystals are like, so we're at the Earth crystal now. So this is the 4th crystal and things are getting really hectic here now. King Tycoon returns in some sense and protects the party from their first encounter with X-Death. And the sisters, obviously now knowing that they're related to each other, are heartbroken and crestfallen over this development. And they kind of add on, again, this is the kind of the imbalance in the story's pacing, because at this point they also get into, and we were mentioning earlier, it's kind of alluded to earlier, but now we really finally realize that Galuf is the king of this other place. And it's cool. There's a reference to him being a lord earlier, if you like pay attention. And I didn't realize this until I was reading about it later, that there's like some foreshadowing. I didn't pick up on it personally. So we discover that Galuf has a daughter, and we were talking Kryl or Krill. I think it's Kryl. It's Krile.
Right.
And that basically he is a member of this old band. So I think the nomenclature in the game is like the Warriors of Light are your guys, and then there's the Dawn Warriors, or the Warriors of Dawn, who are these guys from another place that 30 years earlier started kind of getting rumblings of the return of this creature, X-Death. And it's weird, like X-Death is a tree, if you read about it, you know, and kind of think about it even. And
yeah,
it's this mystical tree that I guess they put all of their bad energies and spirits and just kind of glom all of it onto it. And it's become overcome with the evil that they've been kind of benefiting from it, dealing with and filtering through for them for a while. And X-Death is kind of the manifestation of that, as I understand. Did you understand it that way too? Or?
Yeah, I think that's well said. Yeah, that's what it seems like it's saying to me. Yeah, it's a little bit, you don't know how tropey it is, like how much they're fleshing it out, but that seems like a proper explanation.
And so, as you say, the party opts to go to this other world. And I guess what you realize later on, even after that, is that it's not even about these two worlds, but about rather the evil that these two worlds exist in, and that they put them all into this literal void. And it's within this void that I guess X-Death wants to gain access to get godlike power. So it ultimately becomes very Final Fantasy-like, just like all the other
yes.
games. You're always, Micah was actually saying it when I was fighting X-Death and Neo X-Death at the end, you know, these beautiful sprites.
Oh, it's so cool.
She's like, oh, fighting God, you know? And I'm like, yeah, it always ends up like this, doesn't it? It's like, there's got to be a different, there's got to be a different way, but it is, the stakes are so high all the time, so high. In Final Fantasy VII, like the earth is dying, you know, and in 6, like the earth is being literally torn apart. So it's so funny. It's like, why can't we just have a normal game?
I'm here for it, man. Give me the melodrama.
It is cool. That's what I love about Persona, is that specifically Persona 4, which it was the only one I've played all the way through, where it seems smaller, and there's something fun about that. Although it's big to them.
Yeah, that's neat.
You know,
more realistic, I guess. right? In some sense.
So what do you make of this other world and these other characters that we meet?
I mean, shout out to the presentation, right? I love the fact that this game, like a lot of Final Fantasy games, could walk both sides or live in two worlds, because you have the in-game sprites, whether they're, chibi and cute or Amano-esque and slightly, again, Lovecraftian, right? Like flamboyant, flashy, overly ornate, super weird, maybe mildly disturbing, like the X-Death and Neo X-Death. But first of all, I love the fact that this world is just an extension of that. Because you have like the in-game presentation, which works, but then when you look at the original Amano illustrations of the characters and the enemies and the environments, it's like, holy shit, like they both work. And they're both so different, but just the way everything's so beautifully visually realized, and then multiply that times 2, it's so neat. You don't get a lot of stuff like that. And you would never get a lot of stuff that works both ways. Both aesthetics so dynamically different than one another, which is so fun. But I love this game does something cool too, where the drama systematically ramps up and continually and like consistently just ramps up. So you get more and more sort of offbeat and cosmic environments and enemies. And there's so many enemies in this game with seemingly very few palette swaps. It seems like they built a lot into this game, just in terms of variety and the amount of stuff and the amount of environments, and very little reuse. And if there's reuse, I didn't notice it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
I think one of the things that they do really well, actually, Dig, is like, because there is a really nice diverse variety of locations and environments, is that they do some level of backtracking, which I always think is fun. So that's like a nice, clever way for you in production to reuse a map, palette swap the enemies,
True.
do whatever you have to do. So a good example of this, and this is actually before we didn't even talk deeply about it. It's not that important, I guess, but they returned to all the meteorites to get adamantite to make, to improve the ship. Like Sid and Mid will improve the ship. It's so mean that they call her that.
That's where it came from.
But I think it's neat. Like, it's like, I wonder if that was a thing where they wanted to do that, and they probably did, but it's also probably the producer at the time was probably like, yeah, this is actually a great way for us to just reuse some assets without it feeling forced, which I dig a lot. Because some of the locations feel a little samey, like the Tycoon Castle feels a lot like Baron.
Yeah,
no,
that's true.
Is it no,
Baron?
Baron, yeah, Baron. Bannon is a character in 6. So you're right. You're totally right. And I love it's an appropriate, I was going to talk about it later, but we can talk about it now since we're talking about the visuals. It's like, I love the background graphics, like the battle graphics, like on the grasslands or in the forest, in a mountain, in a cave. I just love that shit. I just love pixel art so much. And I love the mode 7 stuff in the game too, which is pretty nice. They get a little crazier with it in 6, obviously, but yeah, the mode 7 stuff here is nice. Like the really beautiful ActRaiser like spinning visuals of going into the map and shit like that is really cool.
They're having fun. Mode 7 all over the friggin' place in this game. It's zany, but they do, you could say they're having a good time with figuring out the technology, but it's so much fun. And shout out to backtracking. I'm glad you brought that up, because in this game, like a lot of good RPGs, it works in 2 ways. One, when you backtrack and now you're a lot more powerful than you used to be, it's so satisfying to beat the shit out of enemies that you once struggled against, like one hit them and just completely overpower them. That's so fun. And then what they do with a lot of environments too is they'll do like, I'm paraphrasing, but this is the ghost town, now destroyed version of that previous environment, and there's shadow versions or ghost versions of the enemies. So then that's where the palette swaps come in. But they do a good job of making it eerie. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you used to be here and it used to look a lot different. Now it's creepy. Now it's the haunted house or destroyed environment version of what it used to be. It's very thoughtfully done. You know what I mean? Very thoughtfully done. And the fact that you have a lot of autonomy as far as getting ahead of your skis a little bit, as far as like you could get to it. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes in this game, you could get to dungeons and parts of the world that you're not supposed to be at yet. Sometimes they won't let you in, but you can access them initially. So the fact that they make that all work and still, you know, obviously it's an SNES / Super Famicom game. You can't make it mega enormous, but they do a good job of making the scale feel impressive regardless, and giving you autonomy without making you feel like you're completely turned around. And again, like, just a shout out to, like, at every increment in the game, like, you know, bear in mind, I played this game way longer than I probably should have, but 44, 45 hours I finally probably weighed in at. And it was like every hour of that what felt like a really thoughtfully done. It never felt broken. It always felt like I was where I should be, or it was because I was fucking up that I was lost or underpowered or not ready for a boss. And a couple of moments though in this game, I have to tell you, Kyle.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves talking about this, but
doesn't matter.
A couple of moments in this game where I'm glad I had different save slots, because a couple of times I felt like I could have almost like in a way, like soft lock the game, like paralyzed myself. Like there was that one moment where you had to split your party in half. I think it's the Fork Tower dungeon where half of your party has to go, and they kind of are careful to reiterate of like have a party. They basically tell you, put a party together with your strongest white and black magic. And you should listen to that. But half your party goes one way to fight a boss, and half your party goes another way to fight the boss. And if your mage, you know, / sorcery party isn't in the right spot, this boss, there's no way. It's that omniscient boss. He'll keep returning. He'll keep rewinding the fight if you hit him too hard with your melee attacks. And it's a good thing I had a backup quick save slot, because I don't think I could have beat him with the party I had together.
Yeah, you would have had to like grind levels basically.
Flip-flopped it. And I don't remember that being in a game where it's like, wow, did I really just shoot myself in the foot? It was a little harder. This game was a little harder than I expected it to be. But I was happy for it, because it makes you think. You know, you have to put a little strategy together, have a battle plan. You can't be careless.
Definitely. And I think that goes into what I was saying earlier about playing with the different classes. Like, it's harder to put yourself in situations like that if you just have a lot of options,
right?
By cycling through them. So that's one reason why you might want to experiment with other things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, those are all great points. And yeah, I wasn't crazy about that specific dungeon of splitting up the party, just because it did feel it was difficult, which is fine, but it did feel very potentially game breaking if you didn't have a save or something like that, because you would be able to grind your way out of that. I think I wonder if you could cast, if you have a time mage, if you could cast like teleport and get out or something. I don't really know. Maybe not though. I don't know.
It's a good point though. Yeah, because then there was also that timer. You had the 9-second timer before the tower exploded.
Right.
So it was like, yeah, it was a very tricky section. It did feel a little one-offy. I agree with you, because there was nothing else like that in the game. But I mean, that makes it a welcome thing. It was like, it seemed like they were experimenting a little bit, you know, with the game and trying to give it a little variety in terms of like what you have to do, which I found to be a welcome thing.
All right. What did you think about the return of the Moogles? Obviously, we still don't have Mog. Mog is an actual character in 6, and we see a bunch of other Moogles too. We play as them in that game, but we see the Moogles again. Love them. They're so cute. I love when you dress up as one of them to like trick
That's
them,
right.
and they don't know any better. So shout out to them.
Not too bright, the Moogles.
All right, and then let's see what else is here. Oh yeah, we already talked about the beautiful graphics, so I can cross that out. We are introduced more to some of the Dawn Warriors. So we have Dorgan, who we've already met. We know Galuf is one of them, and now we have Kelger, who's the wolf. And I love the scene when they encounter him for the first time and he fights Bartz.
So good, dude. It's one of my favorite moments.
He has the lupine attack or whatever, and then he gets like kicked through a door or something. He's all old and frail. Very, very cute.
Yeah, he spends the rest of the friggin' game in bed.
Yeah, he beats the shit out of him. And we meet Zizat or whatever later on as well, who's kind of like this Beastmaster-esque character. So these are the Dawn Warriors. What did you make of this whole parallel story about? So as I understand it, it's like this has kind of been going on for a long time, like thousands of years or something. And then it was more recently that there were like disturbances being felt that like I was saying, if you look at the volume of evil being instilled into like what would become X-Death, it's starting to overflow. And these Dawn Warriors are kind of the ones that first realized it and fought back against it and kind of stabilized the situation, but not nearly enough. I think I'm understanding that right.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It sort of paints this picture of who came before, like the predecessors as far as good and evil. And then, it makes you think like, okay, if this world extended back further, who came before that? And, this whole thing of like passing on the mantle and this consistent evil that keeps resurrecting itself, very Sauron-like. And then the heroes that have to stand up to it, that type of thing. And the fact that they tie it in, like Dorgon is Bart's predecessor, and Galuf is like, he was involved in, as a younger man, and then he was involved as an old man, and the fact of, I also, shout out to a world where there's werewolves and Moogles and dwarves. I mean, it feels very fantasy to me, where there's a world where it's Earth-like, but it's fantasy-esque in terms of like different races of people. I love the werewolf thing. I just thought that was super cool. And then their personalities and how smart they were, that their prowess, and that they're an important race because they were involved in this ancient, order of opposing evil and all that kind of thing. That was really fun. But I like that whole thing of like having the Dawn Warriors and then having them as old men still play their part as now old heroes, having to play the part and helping, passing the torch down to the younger generation of heroes. And the fact that they were now, once upon a time they were heroes, they were warriors. Now they're all kings. It's super cool. And I love the way I'm glad you brought up the sprites too, because they do feel there's a royalty in them. They look like once upon a time heroes that are now these, now royalty.
There's something very special about the way that just Final Fantasy sprites are constructed. They just look great. And I don't know why that is, like why others couldn't or wouldn't replicate that style. Because there's such bad pixel art in this era too.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true.
It's just so beautiful. It reminds me a lot of the way I feel about Mega Man or something, where it's like, why does this look so much better than everything else? Like there's a certain style to it that is just so much more sophisticated than everything that's going on around it for the power of these machines or lack thereof. So it kind of gets a little sad here. I mean, we have to go and find this guy, this sage Guido, who ends up being a turtle. And again, some of the humor, the weird anime humor, you like find it's kind of sad. You find it on its back and shit, and like it's all fucked up. We also meet Zizat, like I said earlier, Xezat, who's this magical knight, commands like this interesting armada, and the armada is kind of, so X-Death is in this fortress. It's protected by all of these shield generators or whatever, and they're kind of using the armada as like a feint to distract from the fact that they're digging underneath the castle to try to destroy one of the towers, which is cool. And this is where everyone kind of starts dying, because Zizat dies in the explosion to get the shields down. And then by the time you get into the fortress, the wolf character, I think Kelger, kills himself too and reveals himself, right? And reveals the true nature of the fortress, which was a really cool moment, because you go into the castle earlier and you see it a little bit, and it looks very, like a very usual medieval castle. And then it's not really that. It's like it's like a mirage, and that spell is broken, and you realize you're in this like really fucked up place. I thought that was pretty cool.
That's so cool.
But definitely in Rogue One isn't the only example, but very, it just reminded me of Rogue One a lot, of like everyone being like,
it's very Star Wars with shield generators, whether it's Rogue One or Return of the Jedi.
Sure.
With Endor, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, but no one's dying in Return of the Jedi, to get all the stuff done,
That's right.
See, it's a mixture of those two things, because Rogue One's really about stealing plans.
Yeah.
And then the shield generator is more Jedi. So you mix those two things together and you get something like this.
Isn't it so funny though, dude? Like this plot point, this castle with the shield generator towers and stuff probably would not exist without Star Wars. Like there's a direct lineage to Star. Like it's so weird to me. You know what I mean? And obviously this predates Rogue One, but even when you're talking about the shield generator on Endor and you know what I mean? Like it just seems like that lineage is undeniable. You know, so much Star Wars and fantasy, which makes it cool.
Totally. I mean, we see that later with Wedge and Biggs, the characters.
That's right. Wedge and Biggs.
Which is so funny in 6 and 7. That. So you bring this up, and this is another good time to talk about what I wanted to bring up here, which is, or I was going to bring up later, but makes sense to bring up here, which is like there is an interesting mixture with this game. And 6 does it too, but I think this game and 4 does it a little bit too, but it's like mixing fantasy and sci-fi in a weird way that's not quite immediately obvious and doesn't feel sci-fi. So in 4, like we said earlier, you go to the moon and it's like the moon. It's so weird. And you're fighting like alien creatures and you have this weird Lunarian mage with you and all this rest, but it doesn't feel sci-fi, but it is. You're in the lunar whale, you're in a spaceship and going on, but it somehow just fits within the aesthetic as something as opposed to like a Sega's Phantasy Star that's, you know, explicitly sci-fi. This felt more subtle than that and still feels fantasy driven. It really wasn't until 6 is clearly steampunk. You have like Narsh, which is like a electrically lit city. Figaro is a castle that can like go under the ground and shit. So like they're obviously getting much more sci-fi there. But this is much more explicitly so, I think, just in like interdimensional. It's nerdy in some way. It's like it's interdimensional travel between these parallel worlds. And then they share this like one base reality where things can go really wrong there and fuck everything up. But you don't really ever, I've never heard anyone describe these games as sci-fi, but those are major sci-fi elements. And
100%.
They do it very subtly.
It's beautiful. And it's like Star Wars in that, is it a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, or is it futuristic? We don't know, right? It's almost like that ancient Egyptian thing. And it does. They always make it work. It's like werewolves and ninjas with knights and dragons and pirates and shield generators and laser guns in this, you know, these mechanical crab walkers that shoot laser beams, and, you know, mix that with dwarves and underground societies and, you know, magic, and it's insane, and bridges and castles. It's like, but everything just congeals and just forms this like believable world. It's just more fleshed out. You know, sometimes they do it in Final Fantasy they'll include vampires and robots and really offbeat shit, but it always blends to form this believable world. It's just I don't want to say more impressive, but it's a more entertaining world because it's like it's a little bit of anything goes, but it still feels cohesive. It's really cool how they do it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it really inspired fantasy, you know, these games and things like it, where you could be inclusive of all those elements, anything quote unquote nerdy, and make it feel like it's living in a world that it all makes sense together. You know, I just love it because it's so much fucking fun. I could suspend my disbelief all day, give me all that stuff, and none of it ever bothers me.
Agreed. I love it. Again, it just makes sense. And it is what it is in some sense, which is funny. It just makes sense. All right. So further up, we have our first of several confrontations with Exdeath in the Forest of Moor, which is kind of sad because the forest ends up getting like completely destroyed. It's at this point that Galuf ultimately sacrifices himself to save Kryl. Did you see this coming? We're introduced to his daughter much earlier in the game, but I was like, I don't remember that at all for some reason. And she joins the party, but as we said earlier, she joins the party like in his place, so you don't have to start from level 1 or a lower level and not have any jobs unlocked, which is nice. What did you think about that whole? Were you sad by that?
It's basically a palette swap,
right?
It's like so cool. She just jumps in right in where Galuf left off. I mean, I love the fact, you know, give me, if you're gonna have a story with stakes and drama, you got to kill a couple of characters. I get it. That's really cool. And it's sad. It tugs at your heartstrings. It makes you want to win, right? It makes you mad at the bad guy. And Cryle is adorable, right? So it's like, all right, cool. And then what we said earlier, it's like, which I don't think even dawned on me at the time, is like, wow, a party of 4 and 3 female party members. That's so neat, and all very different. You have the like animal sympathizer princess. You have the would-be princess who just wants to be a pirate. And now you have the young mage who's like stepping in for her. Is it dad or grandpa?
Yeah, is it her dad or her grandpa? I don't remember. I think it's her dad.
I forget if she's the daughter or the granddaughter. I always forget that.
Remember. I can look it up.
But yeah, it's so much fun. And just the fact of like, again, like an unnecessary, I was thinking about they like roll with me here. It's a weird thing, but like there's a part in this game where they have to get back into a castle, but they're being kept out. So they sneak in through the sewers. It's just like a little added on thing that didn't, or the aqueducts didn't need to be done, but it was just like a fun little touch, and I feel like having Cryo replace Galuf is the same thing. Like really wasn't necessary in terms of gameplay because you're just picking up right where you left off. It's just a different looking character. You have the same powers, you're at the same level, all that kind of thing. But it's just a fun little thing to do in the story. And it capitalizes on the thing you're already doing with Bart's and inheriting the task from his dad, right? Now Cryo's doing the same thing, which is, it echoes it. So it's a really clever little thing to put in there. And it's fun.
Yeah, I agree. So what did you think of, because by this point we're fighting Exdeath, and a character who hasn't come up yet is Gilgamesh. What did you make of this? I really liked this character, but I also loved the approach of this game comparable to some other role-playing games. So let's even stay in the series. Like in 4, you have like the elemental guys that are, the water guy and the fire guy and everything. You have like these lieutenant characters. In 7, you have the Turks, right? But in this game, you really don't have anything like that. It's like Exdeath, which is like this embodiment of this evil. And then Gilgamesh is like kind of vaguely fighting on his behalf and ultimately gets kind of cast out because he loses over and over again. But I love the conversations he has with you, and like he like appreciates you and likes you. It's interesting. What did you think of this character, Gilgamesh?
Oh, it's so fun, dude. It's such a fun little thing to have running along in the story because you never know when he's going to pop. Well, he pops up once, and then once he pops up the second time, you're like, when is this guy going to pop up again? And he always manages to take you off guard. And yeah, he's like the enemy lieutenant who's, he's like the Starscream type to Megatron. Like he's the next in line, but he's the bumbling, kind of buffoon of a lieutenant, can't get the job done right. So he feels kind of butthurt by his master. And then eventually, he's the foe turned friend. I mean, he plays a big part in the end of this game. And, shout out to the way he looks. I mean, he looks fucking amazing. And I love the disparity between how cool and badass he looks and his personality, which is quite comical, which is really a kind of a fun thing they often do in Final Fantasy, but it definitely capitalizes on that thing of like a goofy character and a cool looking package, which is kind of neat. Because Gilgamesh in the real world is like an ancient sword, right? Shout out to that name. I think Gilgamesh is
let me look. I really don't know anything about this stuff. Gilgamesh is a demigod. Let's see.
Oh, that's right.
Gilgamesh was a hero in ancient Mesopotamian mythology and the protagonist of the Epic of Gilgamesh, an epic poem written in Akkadian during the late 2nd millennium BC. He was possibly a historical king of the Sumerian city-state of Uruk, who was posthumously deified. Tales of Gilgamesh's legendary exploits are narrated in 5 surviving Sumerian poems. So, that's
so cool. Is he often portrayed like in real life in ancient times, like as that multi-armed warrior? I'm not sure, but I just loved like the Final Fantasy sort of cyber tech version of Gilgamesh. It's like it's definitely like his design, and a lot of things in this game are shades to come of what we'll see later on with Magitech and Final Fantasy VI. It's so, and the whole cyberpunk thing and the future primitive. I just love it. I mean, and a lot of that is a mono, and again, the pixel artists that take Amano's work and have to make the sprites. But so it's a marriage with the artists, but it's always beautiful, dude.
It is.
I think as far as the enemy sprites in this game, I was maybe the most impressed outside of 6. I mean, they're just really cool looking enemies in this.
Yeah, they really are. And I love the summons. The summons are really nice too. And it's so funny how far we've come, because the summons are the same in the games today as they were back then. So in Final Fantasy 16, like it took a team of probably 25 people 2 years to work on the summon for Behemoth or whatever. And in this game, it's like just a really beautiful sprite with some effects.
So fun.
And it works.
It does. It really does.
I love this. I love summons. Like that whole idea of summoning is so Final Fantasy. Like, where did that come from?
I don't know.
Of like summoning creatures like that. Right? It's so Final Fantasy. I don't know of anything else. I don't know what the touchstone is for that specifically.
It's a really good point. Yeah. I mean, generally, wizards calling up magic, but never really creatures and stuff like that. Not that I know of. Maybe people listening to the show know where that came at, what that was born out of, but I certainly don't. I always go back to Final Fantasy. I mean, Final Fantasy IV was my first sort of brush with that, with Rydia, and that was I was just off to the races as far as that capturing my imagination. Like that was my favorite character. I was just like so enamored of that whole thing of like this magician that could summon beasts to help her. These crazy epic. The fact that she was a kid doing that, we talk about it all the time. It's just cool. It's just fucking cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Here on the Final Fantasy fandom wiki, under etymology, it says evocation is the act of calling upon or summoning a spirit, demon, god, or other supernatural agent in the Western mystery tradition. Comparable practices exist in many religions and magical traditions and may employ the use of mind-altering substances with and without uttered word formulas. It would be interesting if Rydia like was getting high in some way or doing something like that, like in order to commune with them, like, even as a kid. It's so interesting to think about that. It's so cool. Final Fantasy IV is the fucking coolest.
Oh, it's so cool, dude.
All right. Let's see what else here. I mean, we've touched on a lot of different stuff. That Exdeath Castle, that first one, is pretty tough. You run into a bunch of red, yellow, and blue dragons as enemies. Very reminiscent of that last dungeon in Final Fantasy IV, where it just gets incredibly hard. You vanquish at that point Gilgamesh, and you run into him again later, but it's not a real fight really when you get to him. And then that first fight with Exdeath is pretty tough. I have here in my notes, you have to be like really aggressive in that fight, like get it over with, because if you let him stick around for too long, it's no good.
That's the creepy moon Exdeath. He looks like a giant like flesh moon. Yeah. It's like, what is going on?
Gross.
Like,
so this is what you were saying about the game seeming like it, and this is Dragon Quest 11 felt like this too, where it's like it felt like it's over now, but it's not. And you have to go back to the turtle Guido, and he explains the entire idea of Enuo, which like ENUO, which is like this the void that I've been talking about, where it's the two worlds were unified, and the Enuo is kind of like this mysterious void where these 12 legendary weapons in a castle called Kuza are like containing this balanced power that keeps everything in check or whatever. You get access to all of these weapons too, which is cool. And some of them are really powerful. It really depends on what you're using. Like it's not so exciting to get the legendary harp if you don't have a bard or something like that. But ultimately it sucks because I didn't remember this either. And I remember when I first got there, I'm like, oh, I got to make a choice of like what I want. But then you realize you just go back and you take 3-4 times and then you end up getting all 12.
Right.
So shout out to Sage Guido. And
Guido, I mean, yeah, when do you see like a sage or like a wise man character? You know what I love about this character? He just talks down to the kids. He just belittles them.
Right.
Tells them how stupid they are. I don't know. It's a little Yoda, but meaner.
Right. Yeah, it is a little Yoda.
Right? It's so fun.
Definitely a Yoda vibe to it.
He's like not too bright. These kids aren't too bright.
A cool location I like that we get to late in the game, and I wanted to bring up, is the Phantom Village. I really like that spot. It's weird. It's creepy. It's liminal. And the cool thing about it, if you explore it adequately, is that each store in there has a second store keep that will sell you really powerful shit. But you have to, so like you'll get to a normal store, a shopkeeper, and he'll sell you whatever normal things. But if you can find your way to like the back of the store or to another counter or whatever, through a wall or a secret door or something, they'll sell you more powerful stuff. And that's where the most powerful stuff in the game is. Like you can buy like various rings, like the coral ring and the flame ring and shit like that there, that like give you immunity to entire groups of attacks that are really essential for the secret bosses.
Yeah.
Essentially, especially. And the secret bosses
I
are
kept
tough.
going back there to keep restocking. That was my final town. Yeah, I loved how eerie it was. And then the game brings you back there at a certain point. Do you remember you backtrack through there and the people won't talk to you?
Right.
So it gets extra creepy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a part of the last dungeon where you go through and you, it is creepy. It's cool.
It's creepy as shit.
Yeah, it's good shit. And did you get a lot of well, I guess you couldn't really use them, but there are optional summons. We brought up some of them, but Bahamut and Odin, I think, are both optional. And you can go get them or whatever, and it makes the summoner very, very strong. So there are some cool late game side quests. The game doesn't get too loaded down, very similar to 4, where it doesn't get loaded down with a lot of side questing. 6 gets weird because it really is about how much time you put into the second half of the game and kind of recollecting your party and everything like that. And there are optional characters for the first time. Gogo and Yamaro in that game, and that's obviously continued with Yuffie and especially Vincent in 7. So there's some cool little things that they start messing around with here as well. So I don't know. I mean, like, we get to the end of the game. How do you feel about the ending? How do you feel about the way things are resolved?
Oh, the ending is so good, dude. I mean, the actual ending post beating Neo Exdeath is so much fun because it really spends time with each character and what they're going through. You know, Bart's goes back home and to be close to his parents and, you know, to talk over the grave of his dad. And then it's intimated that he goes back on adventures. He kind of wastes no time and he's back out there. And Lena and Faris / Sarisa back trying to do the princess thing. But you also see Faris like sneaking out the window to go on like little offshoot adventures. So she's staying in character. And then Kryl is kind of lonely and by herself. And I guess at some point, Kryl and Mid formed some kind of friendship. So they're having some sort of correspondence. But then Kryl is like over the grave of her granddad and kind of bumming out. And then here comes the rest of the party jumping out of the tree, say, we're here. And they all get back together again. And it's kind of hinted that they're going to continue on these adventures and then just riding off on Boko and Coco's. I guess that's the newly born chocobos, right? That they have the Boko and Coco have three.
It's so cute. They're so cute.
Chocobo kids.
Yeah, they have little babies.
3 speckled Yoshi eggs, baby Yoshi eggs. And then here comes Lena on Hiryu and the other 3 on their respective chocobos, and they're flying and riding through the landscape. It's so fun, dude. And I should have mentioned this way earlier. Shout out to the intro of this game where you have Final Fantasy V, the lettering masked out. And then behind that is the environment panning. And then Bart's riding along on the chocobo, which I guess is Boko, right? And the background's panning, but Boko and Bart's are slowly gaining through the letter. It's just beautifully done. You know what I mean? Like, it's so beautifully, thoughtfully rendered and animated with such primitive pixelated means, but it's still beautiful.
It is beautiful.
And the ending is a nice sort of bookend to that. You know what I mean? They spend time with the characters. They tell you what happens. And it's a proper ending. I mean, it's like a half hour long, I want to say. Like, it goes on and on. It really does.
Yeah, it is. It is long for a not only for a game of that era, but for a game that doesn't seem to take so much time to even expound its story within the confines of the game. So it really makes you earn the ending, which is cool.
Great point. Yeah, proper payoff.
Definitely. I'm just looking at my other notes. I really don't have too much more to say. Like, there are a few random things that I wanted to touch on. Like, I wanted to go back to Go-Go real quick because I was curious. So I didn't remember this at all. I didn't, when I played the Final Fantasy V previously, I definitely didn't encounter Go-Go.
Oh, that's weird.
Or I did, but I didn't remember it. Because I think you have to beat the game. I don't think he is a side quest character. But one of the things I wanted to bring up here, it's called famed mimic Go-Go, and in the game. But so again, going to the Final Fantasy fandom, which is a really good resource for this, says behind the scenes, some fans believe that famed mimic Go-Go is the true identity of Go-Go from Final Fantasy VI. On top of sharing the same job class name and similar appearance, famed mimic Go-Go throws himself into a time-space warp, and some fans believe he was transported to the world of Final Fantasy VI.
I love
It
that.
seems like that's fairly obvious, right? I mean, it is the same character. It's the same character, which is so strange. I don't remember ever making that connection. I don't know what that was all about. And then,
so they're not pulling a Sid. You know what I
Right.
mean? They're not pulling like every game has a Sid. This is the same character.
it's kind of cool.
I love
It gets pulled into 6. And Go-Go, I think, has some sort of relationship with Setzer in 6, but I don't remember the nature of it. When we get to it, we'll get into that, of course. I like you brought up the dwarves in the underworld before. I like their return, the lolly-ho kind of thing. That's obviously a pull from Final Fantasy IV and even previous games. One of the things that I didn't realize, I always refer Tonberry, the enemy with the lantern. I always was like Final Fantasy VI was where I remembered seeing that for the first time. And obviously it's in 7 as well. And so
Fucking
on.
horrifying.
8. It's really in almost all of them moving forward, but it actually starts in 5. It's not even really an enemy that they call out specifically, and it's a really tough enemy because it gets closer and closer to you as the battle goes on physically, and then does like really powerful attacks and then backs up and does it over and over again. And he has a ton of HP. So pretty cool reference there. I didn't remember Tonberry being in Final Fantasy V.
Nightmare fuel. Absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, definitely.
I hate that fucking guy.
Definitely. And the only other thing I wanted to note, because it's the only other thing that we haven't said here, is and this is a really small thing, but I just love that telltale Final Fantasy lightning crash noise when you beat a boss. When the boss takes enough damage to die, and it's like that crack noise, and then it like shakes, and it's so iconic and beautiful. I love it. Just love it. I love this game.
That's a great call out, dude. But a lot of those things, like a lot of those stings and moments, like just the sound of bio,
Right.
the way that just kind of has that 3-note sort of sting to it and the way it looks. Like, I love those mainstay things that just keep coming back. It's fun to kind of iterate and evolve things, but I just love that. Like, there's something so satisfying about those type of things. And yeah, man, what's crazy about this game? I was looking forward to doing this with you mainly because it clears the runway now so we could do Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But now that I've gotten through this game and realized how great it is, I'm just so happy that we did it at all in the first place as a standalone sort of game. Final Fantasy VI, be damned, right? Like, it's still, I'm so glad we did it just because it's a great game. You know what I mean? And it's just all the more sort of vexing of like, wow, dude, like there's a lot of people that didn't play this game, and I hope we could turn some of you onto it. Like a lot of you are smart. You know by now this was a great game, and you've already experienced it. But hopefully we could turn a few people to it and be like, definitely go play it. This is not a game to miss if you like RPGs, classic RPGs. This is a good one.
Yeah, it's excellent. And we've said this throughout, but like the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster is, throughout our other conversations, I should say, is the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster is like a no-brainer purchase. And you can buy the games a la carte. So if you really just want to play one or the other or whatever, you can do that. But you really should just play them all and really see. It's an investment. It's a definite time investment. The money investment's not too high. It was $70 when it came out. I doubt it's even that much now.
No, I don't think so.
But you get a lot out of it. And yeah, it all culminates in 6. And I agree with you. I was anxious to get to 6. Like, I was anxious to get to 4 and 6. And I was kind of like, yeah, we got to get through 5. And I was kind of mentally underappreciating it. Even though I always liked it, I think I like it a lot more now. Like, again, 6, 4, 7, 5, 16 is probably maybe where I am. 9.
Okay. That's interesting to know from me for the ones I haven't played yet. But I know how much you liked. You loved 16.
Oh my God, it was
right?
so good, dude. It's Final Fantasy. It's Final Fantasy IV infused, with it. Infused with it. It's beautiful, and it's like all these things and all these odes to that game, but in the most beautiful graphical look, like the dragoons, like just fucking pounding, like coming down from the air with their lance and just happening like a frame bouncing out of it or whatever. It's like so cool, man.
Yeah, it's the modern day version of that. I very rarely heard you gushing about a game like that. I tell everybody that. It's like my brother really like that game had an effect on him.
It was shocking how good it was, especially because I just
cool.
didn't. At 15, I didn't even beat because I didn't like it. I was like, I just don't like this game.
Okay.
And 13 was fine, but it's not great. I like it a little more in hindsight than everyone hated it when it came out, though. 12 was fine. 10, a lot of people love 10. I'm not into it. So I just didn't have very high expectations of 16. But I think after Final Fantasy VII Remake was so good, And then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, of course, comes around then and is also excellent. Comes a little after, actually. Yeah, 16 is great, dude. Like, really,
I gotta
really
play
good.
that.
In my opinion, it's somewhat divisive, but I think it's like unquestionably great. I'm shocked. People are like, it's not a Final Fantasy game and it changes this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, Final Fantasy games have always changed. Go play Dragon Quest if you want something that doesn't change. There's nothing wrong with that. I like that. But go play something more traditional. Final Fantasy 16 is natural evolution of Final Fantasy. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And dude, it touches on 4 so much.
I love that. To
the point where I have a theory. I've shared it with the audience, like where I theorize that they're in the same world. Like it's the same. It's like somewhere in the same history of like that planet or something. It's weird.
That's so neat. Yeah. I have to experience it just for that.
Apparently the team behind it, a lot of them did Final Fantasy 14, and Final Fantasy 14, which is the MMO, and Final Fantasy 14 is apparently like completely obsessed with Final Fantasy 4. Now I don't know that firsthand because I've never played it, but that's the case. And if that's the case, then I wouldn't be surprised that they're also inspired by it when they do a single player game like that. So highly recommended.
Yeah, I love
highly recommended.
That's so cool, dude. And you know what? Let me just shout out to the message that Square Enix puts at the end of these games. This is the 5th one we played. And every time it kind of pulls on my heartstrings a little bit. It's just thanks the players past and present, and thanks to people that made the original games. It's just like a 3-line, 2-sentence thing that they put at the very end as a tag. And it's just like, so it's such a classy thing to have at the end of the game. Every time just as an old gamer, it's just like, it gets me in the feels a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just want to shout out to that. I love just putting I love the little period they put at the end of the experience. Again, makes the Pixel remasters they're really, really lovingly done. Very reverent, but modernized, but reverent.
Yeah. I'm curious. I think we've talked about this in the past, but do you go to the old school text or do you keep the new text style in the
Oh yeah. I very rarely go to menus and customize things. I just give it to me how they're initially, in the default, going to present it to me. But that would be interesting.
It's essential, I think, because I think the text is so ugly it doesn't fit at all.
It definitely stands out.
When the Pixel Remasters first came to phone and to PC, 10 years ago or whatever, it was people were like aghast, and those updates are like newer, like to allow the text to be. They were always built into the console versions, but they didn't even release it with like the normal text. So I was like, this is so ugly. I couldn't believe it. And I also did the same thing with the music. The rearranged music is awesome, but I went back to the original music too.
Okay.
Because it just fits like the 16-bit aesthetic better. I don't need like orchestral fucking music with a 16-bit. It's why I don't like voice acting in sprite games. It's like, this doesn't fit,
I totally get that, especially for us. Like, we're not looking for a new presentation. We're used to old games. We know what this is. It's a remake of an old game.
Right. I don't need voice acting or anything. Like, not that there's voice acting in this, but I don't need like orchestrated, rearranged music and shit. It's cool that it's there, but it's not for me. All right, Dig. Well, that's it. That's all we have.
That was fun, dude. Right back in the saddles, like no time passed.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you and I do podcasts all the time, but we haven't done Knockback in a while.
Right, yeah. It's good to get back on the horse.
I like
it's a horse blanket. So
very well. It's a nice horse blanket.
We have an idea of what we want to do next. It won't be Final Fantasy VI, but we'll get to Final Fantasy VI. I assume this summer maybe we'll do it, and
I think so. Yeah.
But the next game we want to do, I think, will be a big one for people, and so we'll get that out, and I think we'll do that for April. So
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I am too. So I hope people enjoy. I mean, give us your feedback if you want to see more of these. I mean, one of the things that I always believed in Knockback, and I think it's an amazing show, but it's a lot of work, and so we really need to find like a wider audiences for it, which is why I think focusing mostly on games is a good idea. Just because those tend to do better. So that will require more time, and thus we will not be able to publish as many, but Knockback is back, and we'll be back in April with another episode.
Back once a month is still back.
Yeah, it's
just
back.
Remember that.
Yeah, it's the best we can do for now.
Kyle, you know what happened to me right before the show? I mean, literally seconds before I logged on to record this with you. Yeah. I shouted to an old animation friend. I haven't seen him. I mean, I'll be liberal estimation 15 years. Right. He moved back to Pittsburgh and he works at a video game company out there. he popped up on LinkedIn for some reason. So I just sent him a little message. Yo, Ches, what's going on, dude? Like, I haven't seen you in so long. What's up? Hope you and the family are well, blah, blah, blah. He got back to me. I saw that he got back to me right before we logged on. So I just checked to see what he said. And he was like, dude, it's so good to hear from you. I actually know what's going on with you because I listened to your Knockback from time to time. A friend at work turned me on to it.
Oh, cool.
Right before we logged on to do this.
All these
that along with the 286 thing.
All sorts of signs.
Something weird going on.
We're back on track. That's awesome.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be able to, and I hope it'll surprise people on the free feeds too to have a new show pop up when it does. But it'll be live on Patreon for a week and people can enjoy it and are enjoying it hopefully. And we'll be back with more.
Nice. Very nice.
Shall we go?
Let's do it, my friend. All right. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Dake. Thanks for your time and be well. Have a good rest of your weekend. Any plans?
You too. Yeah, I told the boys this yesterday on Constellation. I don't think I talked to you about it yet. I'm addicted to Top Golf.
Oh, cool.
No, dude, I have a fucking problem.
You like driving?
That's all I want to do. I don't even the family gets so mad at me. They're like, Dad, you're not even aiming for things. I'm just trying to smack the ball as far. Paying $150 to smack the ball. So Helene's like, go to the
why don't you go to the range? Yeah,
go to the range. Save us money. You're not even playing the games.
Wow, are you gonna start playing golf like Larry David?
I would love it, dude.
I think about it too, Dig. I got to be honest with you. I think about it too. My neighborhood has its own golf course, so it's.
I know it does. See, you're right. You should absolutely.
I think I'm going to. Yeah.
Just do it.
I think I'm going to.
Get Uncle Mike out there. See if you can get Derek involved. Jonathan, you got a contingent. Who knows? Maybe Mike will put on the green plaid pants and get out there with you. You never know.
Yeah, I always tell people this is like, I'm a lefty, so I only knew one left-handed golfer ever in my life, and it was Cody's dad. And so I used to use his clubs. But it wasn't a very accessible sport to me because like I couldn't just like dick around like, oh, you want to try my club? I'm like, I'm a lefty. Like everyone seems to be a righty in golf. But I've always loved playing and I'm just really bad at it. But I love it.
Me too.
But when you connect every once in a while, like when you're driving and you just connect and you just bang the shit out of it, it's like, oh my God. It turns into it's like one of those things where it's like it's a star in the distance, like ding.
A little flash.
Yeah.
And then the guy's it's just like a driving range. The guy's still driving out there collecting balls. I can't wait for that guy to get out there because I'm going after him.
Oh, dude,
families.
I hit the guy once on purpose and in front of everyone, and it was like one of the. I was with Uncle Mike actually and Jonathan. Like it was a while ago, and and he was like kind of near, and I just like took like a slice and hit the cage, and it wasn't anything, but I was like, I did it. I was like, I actually did it, and everyone saw it, and it was so cool,
This is a Top Golf, not a driving range.
No, a Top Golf. Yeah, like with the multiple levels. We were on like the top level, and like I was like going down on him.
Dude, I fucking love it. Why don't they make that guy a game? Like put the LEDs and the targets on that guy.
Yeah, totally. I totally think that's a great idea. Yeah.
What's the problem?
Like driving around like a fucking maniac, like it's Twisted Metal.
So it's an expensive habit. And now the kids, like Lily is the one who actually turned me on to it. So now I can't go without her, and she always has plans. She gets pissed if I go. Like the kids always got plans.
Right.
So me and Graydon are going to sneak out tonight. We're going to go over.
Cool.
Because Lily has got like a party or something.
Cool. Are they're
Lil.
Very socially active, your kids?
She is more so than him. He's like, he's definitely like embodying the introvert. Like we have to be like, yo, call Griffin, like call your friends, like get out of the house for a while. Guitar practice, basketball practice, games, all that kind of thing. He's fine with. But like getting out just to do extracurricular thing, like he needs a reason. It's like, great. You don't always need a reason. Just get the fuck out of your room.
Right.
You know what I mean? She can't pin down, which is getting to be a lot because it looks like she's going to be in Miami.
So that's what you chose or she chose?
Yeah. Well, they're leaving. Helene and Lils are going down. We toured all the other schools. Miami's the last one. She obviously, she got in. They're going to they've never been to Miami. So the girls are going in 3 weeks to see the campus, see the city. And if Lilia likes it, she's going to probably go with Miami. They're also giving her a lot.
Yeah. Dad was saying that. So it's not going to be so crazy.
No, there would just be no way if we had to pay all that, So they came through, which Helene had heard that they're very generous with that generally. And with her, they seem to be giving her more than any other school.
That's great.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's working out. She's going to be far away though. That's, for a dad, it's like,
Yeah, she'll be fine. She'll be in Miami. That's great.
with Crockett and Tubbs.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not coming back. We're going to lose her to Miami. This is like, she's going to love it. It's the beach and it's warm.
Oh yeah. Miami's awesome, dude.
She's going to love it.
Yeah. And how's Graydon's guitar stuff going? Good. You were bringing
He's good. I didn't tell you about this. He had like a performance. It wasn't really a concert. They did a performance at a brewery in a neighboring town, like all the kids, because there's different ages, but they all played 2 pop songs. He did Zombie, the Cranberries.
Oh,
Zombie.
Cool. That game.
And it was him and a bass drummer. And then the teacher sang.
Oh, cool. So he did that hard part at the beginning. Like,
so sick, dude.
Yeah, I love that
so
part.
Good.
That song actually has 2 guitars, so it'd be cool. It would probably be really hard if the teacher singer also played the guitar, like a rhythm guitar.
I tell you, the drummer was a little bit too emphatic, kind of drowned, because we were in a brewery. We weren't like in a performance space.
Right. So he's playing a little loud.
So the drummer really drowned out.
Yeah, you got to get one of those things you see at like churches sometimes where like it's the clear thing that goes around the drum kit that like diffuses the sound.
Oh, that's what that's for?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah, it just makes it a little less loud.
Yeah, that would be a good tip for a little confined space like that, because it was like a brick walled brewery.
Yeah,
that's like, can't hear myself.
Yeah, that's cool, man. We'll have to play together at some point. I just got a bunch of drum heads in the mail, so I'm gonna replace my.
Oh, sick! That's so sick. Cool.
Did he Does he use Sweetwater, the website, to get his musical stuff?
No, you know what? I used to work with a kid. I mean, he was literally a kid who was a great guitarist, and he recommended that to me
so good,
for Aiden.
Yeah.
But he's just learning the traditional way, and the only problem I have with it is he puts his amp so low when he's practicing that I don't even know when he's playing. And I don't know if it's out of embarrassment or if he's just being considerate.
You should put headphones on.
Yeah. Like, dude, what is your problem? Like, can I hear you practice once in a while? I had no idea he was even playing Zombie until like a week before the performance. Helene's like, do you even know what he's playing? I'm like, no, I have no idea.
Oh, that has like cool, like, ding. I can't even do it. It's too high, but like the little parts of the guitar. Ding,
yeah, I know it should be.
Ding, ding, yeah. Oh man, he's like killing it doing that kind
of a cool song,
yeah, it's a
right?
great
Like
song.
I wouldn't have thought of that, but that I was like, then it made sense. Right? Shout out to that is the Cranberries, right?
Yeah, definitely.
She died really early. That lead singer,
awful,
right? Really young.
Yeah, Dolores Reardon or whatever her name is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's doing good. He's just got to get the hell out of the house.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I was the same. Yeah. All right, man. Well,
right,
my best to the fam. Be well. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support. Appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed the comeback of Knockback, and we'll be back with more. We'll be back with more next week. No, next month.
Peace.
Next month.
Right.
God, I guess it's time to go. Dig, appreciate you.
Oh, super fun, dude. Thank you.
All right, be well out there.
Good to be back.
Yeah, we're back, and you can wear your Moogle sweatshirt now. Because it's got that off-white kind of thing, so it's a little more Moogle-ish than a white mage.
All right, Moogle-ish I could see. I don't have a black hoodie. I would have done the black mage thing. White mage just sounds racist.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's all right.
I don't want to.
Who cares? All right, be well. Bye.
Peace.
Knockback, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. Knockback's executive producer is Dustin Furman. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Knockback, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.